Chapter 326. Chi-Yu frowned slightly. In fact, even he didn't understand what Ryue was trying to do. With Ryue's intelligence, there was no way she wouldn't be able to tell that the dark energy wouldn't have much of an impact on the Burning Legion. At this time, she was alone. Once she was entangled by the other party's powerhouses, it would be difficult for her to break free. Although that was what he thought, Chi-Yu naturally wouldn't lose to Satan in words. He snorted coldly and said, "Then you just wait and see. I think Ryue will give you a surprise. Perhaps I should introduce to you that this powerful warrior who has transformed into a dragon is one of my wives, the dragon warrior of the 12 Zodiac guardian gods. Apart from me, she is also the most powerful of the 12 Zodiac warriors." Hearing the words, one of his wives, Satan, and Linger's gazes at Chi-Yu changed almost at the same time. At this time, Ryue had already given her answer. She had used facts to prove that Chi-Yu's trust in her was completely correct. That's right, the corrosive fog wouldn't have much of an impact on the Burning Hell Legion. However, as soon as she came into contact with this huge dark energy, Ryue discovered that this huge dark energy was actually semi-liquid and extremely sticky. When used in an attack, as long as it stuck to the opponent's body, it would be very difficult to get rid of it. This was also the strength of this kind of dark attack. But now, Ryue had completely used this strong stickiness, where the dark clouds shrouded. More than 30,000 soldiers of the Burning Legion were shrouded by the huge black cloud. The huge energy almost instantly stuck all the hell creatures' bodies. Although the black cloud wouldn't affect them and they only needed to assimilate it with the dark energy, the hell creatures' bodies were completely glued to the black cloud. It wouldn't take too long for them to dissolve it. However, would Ryue give them that kind of time? Dragon God Domain Break. 5 cold words came out of Ryue's huge dragon mouth. Her gigantic body that was floating in midair suddenly stopped. Her body violently swung in a circle, and dozens of experts from hell who had surrounded her were instantly sent flying. It seemed that they would not survive. It raised its 2 huge front claws, and a special energy fluctuation suddenly appeared all over the dragon's body. With Ryue's body as the center, the space within a radius of several hundred square meters completely calmed down. The dark blue scales on her body turned milky white in an instant. Tyrannical energy, fluctuations, soared into the sky. Chi-Yu, Lucifer, and Satan were all too familiar with that kind of aura. That's right, Ryue used her divine dragon transformation body to forcefully tear the space apart. Seeing this scene, Chi-Yu and Satan's expressions changed dramatically at the same time. Of course, their emotions were completely opposite. A huge black hole appeared out of thin air in front of Ryue's huge dragon body. The black hole didn't seem to have any effect on Ryue. But at this moment, Ryue let out a fierce roar towards the sky. Then, the distorted light rapidly expanded within the range of the black cloud, causing the entire black cloud to distort. Domain. That was the power of a domain. After reaching the 9th cloud level, Ryue finally understood her domain as a Zodiac dragon warrior. Black holes were the king of devouring. They could even devour light. Although a man-made black hole couldn't compare to the black holes in the universe, it was absolutely terrifying when used on the battlefield. Lucifer and Satan almost immediately understood what Ryue was doing. Their bodies rushed down at almost the same time, pouncing towards the black hole. At this time, after releasing the dragon god domain, Ryue seemed to be on the verge of collapse. She instantly canceled the divine dragon transformation and returned to her human form. Relying on her wings, she flew up high. Satan and Lucifer didn't care about Ryue at all. The black hole below was their target. However, could they really succeed? The answer was, of course, no. Chi-Yu wasn't a dead man. Wind on the left and lightning on the right. Chi-Yu used a speed that even Satan couldn't see clearly to block in front of them in an instant. Please keep your promise and go back. Wind was the wind of destruction, filled with souls. Lightning was the righteous lightning of heaven and earth that specialized in restraining hell creatures. The vast energy of the earth swept up in an instant. Even when facing Lucifer and Satan, the two super experts of hell, Chi-Yu still chose to face them head-on. A loud bang suddenly appeared in midair. 3 figures shot out in different directions at the same time. Chi-Yu let out a muffled groan. The energy fluctuations on his body clearly weakened a little. 1 against 2, and it was a head-on collision without any fancy moves. After all, he still suffered a little. However, for him, this short period of time was enough. Satan and Lucifer no longer had the chance to stop the dragon god domain from erupting. The black hole, incomparably terrifying devouring power, manifested under his feet. Even Chi-Yu, who was in midair, could clearly feel the terrifying devouring power released by the black hole. In an instant, everything within thousands of square meters was swept away. At the same time, the stickiness of hell's corrosive fog played an important role. Under the lock-on of the dragon god domain, coupled with the corrosive fog's strong stickiness, the black cloud was frantically sucked in by the black hole. All the hell creatures within the range of the black cloud were directly sucked into the black hole along with the black cloud. The result didn't need to be explained. Everyone knew what it meant to be sucked into the black hole. Almost in an instant, a large empty space appeared on the entire battlefield. Moreover, it was a large empty space that no one dared to set foot in. The 30,000 soldiers of the Burning Legion were completely devoured in an instant. Even though these new soldiers of the Burning Legion had just been recruited by Satan before he came to Earth, it still meant that this was 1% of the entire Burning Legion's combat power. Satan's eyes were completely red. The disappearance of 30,000 subordinates proved how powerful Ruo was. It also made his hatred for these humans in front of him reach its peak. When he saw the mocking glint in Chi-Yu's eyes, he charged forward almost instantly. Chi-Yu snorted coldly, for types of thundercloud force erupted from his body at the same time. In an instant, for types of elemental energy erupted in midair. It was about to engulf Satan's attack. Wait a minute. Lucifer's voice suddenly sounded. He pulled Satan back, but due to his strength, the difference. His body was brought 100 meters away by Satan before he stopped. This was with Satan controlling his own energy. The difference between 12 wings and 8 wings was huge. Mr. Chi, I'm sorry. We were anxious just now. I think we should continue with our bet, Lucifer said to Chi-Yu in a low voice. Ever since he was defeated by Chi-Yu, he had become much gloomier. However, he was no longer as impulsive as before. After all, in the absence of absolute strength, wisdom was the most correct choice. Satan glared at Lucifer, but he saw Lucifer quietly shaking his head at him. Following Lucifer's spiritual aura, Satan looked at his feet and immediately understood what Lucifer meant. In the collision, just now, Lucifer, Satan, and Chi-Yu collided. The shockwave produced was naturally full of destruction. Not far from the empty space where the black hole engulfed, there was also a small empty space. And this empty space, it was completely filled with craters. There was not a single soldier of the Burning Legion inside. Needless to say, those soldiers had already been turned into powder by the shockwave in the violent collision. For experts like Satan and Chi-Yu, the moment they truly fought, they would not be able to escape. The destructive power it produced did not only affect them. The Zodiac Legion only had a little more than 100 people. It was a pitifully small target. However, the Burning Legion had sent out 500,000 soldiers this time. Lucifer and Satan both understood that Chi-Yu's destructive power was definitely much more terrifying than that of the giant dragon. Ruo floated in midair. At this time, she had already returned to the square camp. In midair, her chest was heaving up and down, but the domineering look in her eyes was stronger than before. She exchanged glances with Chi-Yu. Both of them could feel the approval in each other's eyes. The battle was still going on. However, at this time, in the hearts of the Burning Legion soldiers, there had already been an earth-shattering change. There were 12 Zodiac guardian warriors. Although Ryue was the most powerful one, she was definitely not the only powerful one. The Burning Legion naturally saw Ryue's exhaustion. The 3,000 powerhouses that came out of the Valley of Demons had already completely thrown themselves into the battle. Among them, 2 six-winged black generals directly pounced in the direction of Ryue. They obviously wanted to destroy this powerhouse. Ryue, before she recovered her strength to prevent the same situation from happening again. Ryue floated to the ground as if she did not see them at all. A golden light suddenly appeared around her body and completely wrapped her delicate body. The Zodiac guardian warriors were all fighting. At this moment, no one actually came to help Ryue. It was not that they had given up on Ryue, but that each of them had absolute confidence in Ryue. After consuming a large amount of dragon power, it did not mean that Tyrannosaurus Rex did not have the ability to fight anymore. The golden light suddenly gathered, and a figure instantly separated from Ryue's body. It was the appearance of a woman. She had long golden hair, a pale golden face, a gorgeous golden armor, and a pair of golden eyes. There was not a single part of her body that was not golden. Her beauty was actually comparable to Ryue, who was beside her. Ryue stood there without moving. She even closed her eyes. At this moment, the golden beauty that suddenly appeared raised her head. Looking at the 2 six-winged black generals pouncing down from the sky, she did something that no one would have expected. She took a step forward and stretched her arms to the sides of her body. Then, an extremely violent roar suddenly erupted from her mouth. That's right, it was a roar. Moreover, it was not a simple roar. The deafening sound suddenly rose into the sky like rolling thunder. A huge golden aura almost instantly filled an area of hundreds of square meters. The 2 six-winged black generals bore the brunt of the impact. Under the impact of the huge energy and the violent sound wave, their bodies were sent flying at the same time. Their eardrums seemed to have ruptured. The only thing they could think of now was to desperately release their own dark energy to protect their bodies. They did not think that the golden beauty below was stronger than them. However, the sudden sound wave did not only damage their bodies, but also their hearing. In desperation, they could only choose to retreat. As for the Burning Legion experts who were rushing towards Ryue on the ground, they were within the range of the sound wave. Almost at the same time, they covered their ears and fell to the ground in pain. The weaker ones directly died with blood flowing out of their 7 orifices. Satan looked at the situation below with his mouth agape and murmured, "What kind of ability is this? Is it an attack with a shout?" Even he was not sure if his voice could have such great power. A strange smile appeared at the corner of Chiyu's mouth, and he said, "Your Majesty Satan, I don't know if you've heard of an idiom in the east of the river. It's called the roar of a lion from the east of the river. That's what's coming next." That's right, it was the roar of a lion from the east of the river. Back then, during the era of the ancient beasts, Ryue had received a messenger token. It was received by God Kirin. Her messenger token was a golden lion with a cultivation of close to 20,000 years. During the period of cultivation in the seal, under the joint effect of the 5 elements domain and Chi-Yu's source of nature, Ryue was not the only one who had evolved. The golden lion had finally broken through the bottleneck and reached the level where it could transform into a human form. This golden lion was a female, so the name Roar of a Lion from the east of the river was naturally well deserved. Golden light flickered and supported Ryue's delicate body. The golden beauty had already disappeared. Just as Chiyu had said, a huge golden lion appeared on the battlefield with Ryue sitting on its back. The combination of a dragon and a lion once again attacked the opponents. Even though she had consumed a lot of energy, how could ordinary people deal with Ryue's tyrannical physical strength alone? Following the lion's roar, another roar was heard. The dark red light instantly engulfed the bodies of hundreds of enemies. Another white figure instantly merged with the black figure, and at the same time, a round of light like the sun burst out. Next, the two figures, one white and one black, rose into the air at the same time. A huge energy fluctuation spread rapidly, and the sun-like light also became more and more intense. Chi-Yu shouted in midair. Good. A burning gaze shot out from his eyes. Of course, he could see who the figure in the air was. At the same time, he also understood that Ryue was not the only one who had reached the 9-cloud level. The white figure, the handsome face, the huge and majestic aura. That was Su Dong, the Zodiac tiger warrior Su Dong. And the black figure beside him was a special black tiger. In the era of the ancient beasts, her name was Black Tiger. Her biggest characteristic was that the word king on her forehead was red. As Black Tiger rose into the air with Su Dong, her huge body that was more than 10 meters long suddenly shrunk and also appeared in front of Su Dong. The beauty, who was covered in black armor, looked at the burning legion soldiers below her with a cold aura, as though she was looking at a group of ants. She and Su Dong held hands, and their auras rose at the same time. Su Dong glanced at the black beauty beside him, and the light in his eyes was exceptionally gentle. When the Mo Jinghu was able to transform into a human form in the 5 elements domain, he was glad that he had made the right choice. Perhaps it was because of the attraction of auras, but ever since he had Black Tiger, Su Dong had changed a lot. The majestic aura that belonged to a tiger was much stronger than before, and the original lascivious aura had quietly disappeared. Holding the hand of the black beauty, a loud tiger roar sounded from Su Dong's mouth. After the dragon's roar, how could a tiger's roar be lacking? As one of the first people to become a Zodiac warrior, Su Dong's strength was unquestionable. The sun behind air, who was dark red, and it contained both Su Dong's energy and the Black Beauty's energy. Su Dong and the Black Beauty looked at each other. The two of them nodded at the same time. In the next moment, their bodies had already changed, and they actually threw themselves into the huge dark red sun at the same time. The moment they threw themselves into it, a dazzling light burst out, and a huge energy wave almost swept the entire sky in an instant. In the dark red sun, 2 huge figures appeared at the same time. They were the black and white tigers. That's right, they were 2 tigers. Their figures were completely imprinted in the sun's light, and at that moment, the huge aura in the sky made Satan suddenly feel a trace of sorrow. Ryue casually killed an enemy next to her, then raised her head to look at the light in the sky. A faint smile appeared on her cold, pretty face. In terms of cooperation, I'm afraid that Su Dong and his envoy are the best among all of us. So much so that he's even better than me in terms of understanding his domain. He's even better than me. The Golden Lion said indifferently, that's because opposites attract. Actually, I can also merge into your domain, but I'm not a dragon, so I don't have the ability to merge like they do. That's right, Su Dong, who had transformed into a white tiger, had already proved that he had reached the 9-cloud level. The white tiger transformation also symbolized the meaning of his ultimate aura. As for the black tiger beside him, it had completely merged with his aura. At this moment, the figures that they transformed completely lit up the sky. Domain fusion. This could only happen when the 2 auras were completely the same. Su Dong did it because Mo Jinghu wasn't just his envoy, but also his lover. Satan didn't move this time because he knew that Chi-Yu, who was next to him, wouldn't allow him and Lucifer to interfere. Moreover, even if it was him, even if he blocked that domain, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be injured, and once he was injured, the outcome would be very hard to predict when he fought with Chi-Yu again. The original white tiger domain had been upgraded to the divine tiger domain. It was a light like the sun. It represented the power of fire, the unparalleled power of earth fire. In an instant, it was swept clean. The sun shone brightly. The entire Berlin suburbs were completely lit up. Even the incomparably huge Hell City was slightly trembling under the cover of this light. The light illuminated the area, and the green flames on the bodies of at least 150,000 members of the Burning Legion turned dark red. In the next moment, the dark red flames had already started to burn their bodies and souls. It wasn't directly destroyed, but the divine fire in the divine tiger domain wouldn't be easily extinguished. Even though the Burning Legion's dark energy was so strong, it couldn't be extinguished in a short time. Then, the only result was that they would burn themselves. The 150,000 Burning Legion soldiers, who were enveloped by the light, lost more than half of their combat power in an instant, and the pressure on the great golden-winged eagle corps, led by Vol, was greatly reduced. At this moment, as the battle progressed, the members of the 12 Zodiac squad had more or less suffered some injuries. 2 huge white tigers fell from their mouths at the same time, their energy completely restrained. However, how could their bodies, which were more than 10 meters long, be easily resisted? Their huge bodies launched a violent attack on the soldiers of the Burning Legion, and most of their targets were the enemies that had been enveloped by the divine tiger domain. Wherever air who went, the flames brought by the divine tiger domain would instantly rise. Although they were also withstanding the powerful attacks of their enemies, their sturdy bodies prevented the experts of the Burning Legion from inflicting any real harm on them, at least in a short period of time. With 2 loud booms, Ruyue and the Golden Lion King retreated at the same time. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Ruyue's mouth, and the energy on the Golden Lion King's body became even more violent. The 2 six-winged black generals had no intention of letting them go, and Ruyue had indeed used up too much of her energy. Although she recovered rather quickly with the help of the natural source energy that Qiyu had infused, how could she have time to rest in such an intense battle? A faint light flickered in Qiyu's eyes. Ruyue was injured, and it was as if he had been stabbed in the heart. If this continued, even with the protection of the Golden Lion King, it would be very difficult for them to fight against the 2 black generals who had reached the level of a dreadlord. Ruyue, why are you so stupid? Hurry up and regroup with everyone. Although we can only unleash the greatest attack power if we spread out, we still have to put your safety first. Just as Qiyu was worrying, a loud and clear phoenix cry sounded at almost the same time. Immediately after, a huge figure suddenly appeared on the other side of the battlefield. The huge figure kept expanding, and in just a few blinks of an eye, it had already expanded to a height of more than 100 meters. Its huge body also covered an area of more than 100 square meters, or even more. Wherever the huge figure went, no one knew how many enemies were swept away by it. It was not a human, nor was it a beast. It was a tree that was more than 100 meters tall. An ancient giant tree, a chicken warrior, Ji Mingming's command. Even Qiyu had never seen an ancient giant tree before. Now that he saw it, he could not help but be dumbfounded. The roots of the ancient giant tree had actually condensed into the shape of 2 giant feet. They actually condensed into the shape of 2 huge feet. Tens of thousands of branches waved in the air like huge arms. All the enemies in front of him were swept away by the huge branches. Although the enemies were strong, they were still shaken away by the branches. Although the lethality was not too strong, they were still shaken away. Although the damage was not too strong, it had completely cleared a large area in an instant. The loud and clear phoenix cry came from the tree, and in the next moment, a rainbow-colored light soared into the sky. The dazzling rainbow-colored light kept changing in the air, and once again illuminated the entire battlefield. Satan's heart trembled slightly, and he muttered, "It's not over yet. There are actually so many powerhouses among the humans." The previous 2 blows had already made him feel apprehensive. The strength of Ruyue and Sudong had given him a whole new understanding of the entire Zodiac army. Although the strength of these people was far from Qiyu's, it seemed that they had already surpassed the powerhouses of the 6-winged black generals under him. If this battle continued, given their formidable strength, they would pose a great threat to the Infernal Realm's camp. especially that flock of giant golden birds. Wherever they passed, they would sweep away the powerhouses of the Burning Legion as if they were harvesting wheat. The infernal demon sorcerers who had dared to attack them just now had already been cut in half. At this time, under their strong sweep, their numbers had been reduced by half, and it was impossible for them to use the same corrosive fog to attack them. When he saw Ming Ming's figure, Chi Yu's eyes lit up, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He thought to himself, "Brothers, you have really brought me too many surprises. Everything you have done is much more perfect than I had imagined." At the same time, his worry for Ruyue had completely disappeared. This was because the direction in which Ming Ming had flown towards was where Ruyue was. The rainbow-colored light continued to condense in the sky, and Ming Ming's figure could not be seen at all. Suddenly, the rainbow-colored light had two abrupt colors, white and black. The rainbow-colored light instantly turned into a 9-colored light. Immediately after, a massive energy fluctuation rose, and the area enveloped by the 9-colored light expanded to a range of hundreds of meters. A loud and clear phoenix cry soared into the sky. Just like how the Burning Legion had been affected by the lion's roar, more Burning Legion soldiers fell to the ground due to the sharp phoenix cry. The area enveloped was much larger than the golden lions. After all, this was one of Ming Ming's special abilities. What was the radiance of a phoenix? Only those who had truly experienced it would understand how powerful a phoenix was. A dragon's power lay in its dominance, while a phoenix's power lay in its aura. That's right, it was its aura. As one of the noblest races, when a phoenix's ability was raised to the peak, it would no longer be a phoenix, but the vermilion bird of the 4 divine beasts. At this moment, Ming Ming had transformed into the appearance of a vermilion bird. When the massive energy was raised to the limit, the huge body of a phoenix that was 100 meters long suddenly retracted and returned to its original size of about 10 meters. However, the 9-colored light had completely disappeared, and Ming Ming had completely transformed into a phoenix that was completely red in color. This was the true vermilion bird. However, unlike the vermilion bird of the primordial divine beasts, the vermilion bird that Ming Ming had transformed into had an additional strand of silver hair that extended from the top of her head all the way to her back. This made the energy aura on her body seem even more peculiar. This wasn't the power that the vermilion bird originally possessed, but rather it came from Chi Yu's blood. Ming Ming had once been seriously injured, and Chi Yu had used his blood to save her. Therefore, the bloodline in her body wasn't just the pure phoenix bloodline. At the same time, it had also fused with a certain amount of Kirin's bloodline. Now that she had truly reached the peak of the chicken Zodiac, the Kirin's bloodline that she had fused with back then was truly effective. The huge wings shone dazzlingly in the sky as the vermilion bird's body flipped in the air, and it dove down like a fighter jet. The intelligent Ming Ming didn't directly use her most powerful energy attack like Ruyue and Sudong had. This was because she knew that among all the chicken Zodiac warriors, there were actually only 4 who had truly reached the 9-cloud realm. At this moment, both Ruyue and Sudong had already expended a large amount of energy. Although they had already caused great losses to the enemy, it was clearly not enough against a total of 500,000 Burning Legion soldiers. Therefore, if she expended any more energy, she wouldn't be able to save her companions in time if they were in danger. The 2 6-winged black generals suddenly felt a huge pressure in the air, and they didn't dare to attack Ruyue anymore. They turned around at the same time to face the vermilion bird that Ming Ming had transformed into. The fiery red light wasn't of the fire attribute, but a special kind of divine power that only belonged to the vermilion bird. Wherever the light passed, the 2 6-winged black generals were sent flying at the same time. Ruyue had always been the actual commander of the Zodiac Legion. When she saw this situation, she immediately shouted, "Zodiac guardian gods, get into formation and gather around the ancient tree. With the ancient tree as the center, we'll kill our way over." Without the threat of the 2 6-winged black generals, Although Ryua had expended a large amount of energy, the ordinary Burning Legion soldiers were no longer a threat to her. In just a few flashes, with the help of the Golden Lion, she had already rushed to the side of the ancient tree. With the giant tree as her support, she didn't need to deal with enemies from all directions anymore. She only needed to attack in one direction. Under Ryua's command, the Zodiac guardian gods, who were originally scattered to kill the enemies, began to attack the ancient tree. At this moment, everyone's true strength was displayed. Field Mouse was in midair, riding on Little Pung as his mount. He led the 12 Zodiac warriors and continuously charged through the Burning Legion. However, he always controlled the formation around the ancient tree. This way, if the enemy's anti-air power was too strong, he could return to the side of the ancient tree to temporarily hide. The ancient tree's defense was extremely strong. Even the hellfire could only cause minor damage to it. The thousands of branches became the best cover for the 12 Zodiac warriors as they killed their way into the depths of the Burning Legion. Chapter 3:27. Nine-Headed Snakelet. Guanping roared. His entire body was instantly engulfed in golden flames. Under the sudden increase in energy, his body instantly swelled to a height of 10 meters. A huge golden airflow revolved around his body. Surprisingly, there was no armor. His body was completely covered by a layer of incomparably solid golden fur. That huge body constantly let out a series of intense roars. As a lion mastiff, he was the 4th Zodiac guardian god warrior to advance to the 9-headed level. Following Guanping's roar, 9 huge heads popped out from his back almost at the same time. His entire body swelled up. The 9 huge snake heads emitted different colored lights. In an instant, the 9 colored lights immediately cut a bloody path, blocking the way. This caused Guanping to quickly move towards the direction of the ancient tree. Although he was the furthest away from the ancient tree, he was the second to arrive after Ryua. A 9-headed Zodiac guardian god warrior was indeed powerful. A super ferocious beast that specialized in long-range attacks. The one with the strongest long-range attack power among everyone was the 9-headed snakelet, which had cultivated for more than 10,000 years. From the appearance of the 9-headed snakelet, it looked like a giant 9-headed snake. It was somewhat similar to the deep-sea nether snake before it evolved into a dark dragon, except that its body was slightly smaller. However, its 9 heads were different from the deep-sea nether snake, which would only grow 1 head to increase its strength. It was born with 9 heads, and its 9 heads could release 9 different energy attacks of different attributes. Its long-range attack power was extremely powerful. The 9 types of attack energy were gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, and darkness. It was definitely a super ferocious beast with balanced energy attributes. However, because of its extremely small numbers and weak physical attack and defense, it did not have a very high status among the ferocious beasts. However, after becoming Guanping's Earth token, its situation had completely changed. Although Guanping could not fuse with the 9-headed snakelet like Su Dong and the black crystal tiger, the 9-headed snakelet could possess him after he completed the 3rd stage of origin mutation. The long golden hair and strong body of Guanping became the best shield for the 9-headed snakelet. If it was close, it would have Guanping's powerful physical attack. If it was far away, the balanced energy attack of the 9-headed snakelet was extraordinarily powerful. The lethality made the Burning Legion flinch. After the 4th 9-headed Zodiac guardian god warrior erupted, the other 8 Zodiac guardian god warriors also erupted at the same time. With Vol leading the Zodiac squad and the Golden-Winged Eagle Legion in the air, it was too difficult for the Burning Legion to harm. Each and every one of them displayed their extraordinary strength. Although Mo Dan's strength had not reached the 9 clouds yet, she was already at the 8 clouds level. Under the effects of the 2 attribute mutations, her body had obviously swelled up a lot. A layer of green light covered her body, and her swollen body was like a barbaric wild bull rampaging about. Her main strength was in physical attacks, and the protective energy around her body was even more tyrannical. As a result, many hell creatures only dared to hide and attack her from afar. However, if they thought that Mo Dan could only attack at close range, they would be gravely mistaken. A ray of golden light. It kept flashing around Mo Dan's body. No matter who attacked her, they would receive special treatment from the golden light. That's right, it was Mo Dan's order. Stinging golden rat. This ancient giant beast was extremely fast, and its attacks were extremely penetrative. Although its body was not big, its destructive power was extremely shocking, to the point that many large ancient giant beasts were not willing to make an enemy out of it. At this moment, it had already become Mo Dan's greatest help. With its protection, although the wounds on Mo Dan's body kept increasing, and the thundercloud force was also being consumed very quickly. However, no one could truly harm her. Modi's situation was the exact opposite of Mo Dan's. Mo Dan was the center, and the stinging golden rat was the main attacker, while Modi was the center and became the main attacker himself. Streaks of almost invisible light and shadows shot out from her long and slender legs. After going through energy compression, this seemingly thin leg blade possessed extremely tyrannical, destructive power. Moreover, the energy that Modi kicked out was completely rotating. In addition, her leg strength was extremely shocking. Usually, a single kick would kill at least a few Burning Legion soldiers. The huge diamond bear was like a moving fortress. Although its body size was far from the ancient giant trees, its defense was much stronger than the ancient giant trees. The Vajra bear was a mild-tempered, neutral beast, but it did not mean that it did not have a temper. It became Modi's shield. Although the hell creatures could hardly hurt his body that was made of iron and bronze, he still felt pain. Reality proved that when a person with a gentle temperament exploded, it was often more terrifying. The adamantine bear looked clumsy, but its huge paws were like two doors. There were too many people in the Burning Legion. Although it could only use its paws to attack, anyone who was hit by its paws would be smashed to smithereens, even if it was a hell creature condensed from the tallest boulder. With the diamond bear as the center, Modi used his fast speed and tyrannical leg strength to create an open space. It was not until he heard Ryue's voice that he approached the ancient giant tree with the diamond bear. It could be said that Hu Guang was like a fish in water. After receiving Ryue's order, he acted as if he didn't hear it and didn't care at all. The other Zodiac warriors more or less had some flaws and weaknesses, but the current Hu Guang, although his attack power was not so good, his body almost had no flaws. The Emperor Slime's super energy immunity, coupled with the Emperor Black Mamba's physical immunity after reaching the 8-cloud level, not to mention these Burning Legion soldiers, even if Satan personally attacked, it would take a lot of energy to destroy Hu Guang. Only a comprehensive super energy bombardment that exceeded the Emperor Slime's maximum defense energy could hurt Hu Guang. After Hu Guang's body went through 2 different attributes, he became extremely flexible in battle. He darted here and there, leaving a trail of black venom wherever he went. However, what made him very depressed was that these creatures from hell were very resistant to venom, and it did not achieve the effect he expected. It was far worse than when he dealt with the Jilly people. However, strong immunity did not mean complete immunity. After the concentration of the Emperor Slime, all enemies that Hu Guang had direct contact with would still fall. However, this made Hu Guang's killing speed much slower than the others. But no one could stop the slippery Hu Guang. As long as he wanted to, he could meet up with everyone at any time. Hummer and Yen Xiaoi were now together, mainly because he was afraid that Yen Xiaoi would be injured alone. After all, Yen Xiaoi's own attack ability was almost negligible. Hummer was indeed a Hummer. His killing method was very simple. Whoever was close, he would punch them. Every enemy that died to him would never have a complete body. His violent, 3-eyed demonic ape had the same style as him, and it was also a strong attack. However, the violent three-eyed demonic ape's eyes could shoot out death rays. Wherever the tyrannical penetrating power passed, it was definitely a skewer of candied haws. Unfortunately, this kind of ray could only penetrate head-on and not sweep. Otherwise, the effect would be better. The most relaxed person on the entire battlefield was Yan Xiaoyi, Hummer. The three-eyed demonic ape and his own Cyclops formed three walls surrounding him in the center. The Cyclops' mental fluctuations were more lethal than the three-eyed demonic apes. With one attack, a group of idiots from the Burning Legion would appear. The Cyclops' physical attack was equally strong. Their combination was like an iron wall. Although Yan Xiaoyi was in the middle, he was not idle. Against so many Burning Legion hell creatures, it was impossible not to be injured. However, with Yan Xiaoyi's thundercloud force as a backup, the Hummer, the three-eyed demonic ape, and the Cyclops never sustained damage for more than 10 seconds. Layers of milky white brilliance were constantly released from the center, and in an instant their injuries were healed. Ian was not far from Yan Xiaoyi. His fighting style was similar to Modi's, with his diamond gorilla as the center, constantly pushing forward. In terms of defense, the diamond gorilla was much weaker than the diamond bear. However, in terms of attack, the diamond bear was far inferior. Although the diamond gorilla was 10 meters tall, it was very agile. But he was very agile. His thick arms were very strong. Its thick arms displayed unimaginable power. As for En, the monkey, and the gorilla, their teamwork was even more intimate. He fully displayed his agility, concentrating his attack energy, forming a cone-shaped golden energy sword in each of his hands, specifically targeting the enemy's vital points. Therefore, although he killed a lot of people, he did not expend much of his energy. The funniest person in the battle was definitely Guanjing. Everyone else had maintained their good figures due to long periods of training. Even Vol and Mo Dan's fat bodies had become slim, but not him. He was originally a semicircle, but now he had become a globe. That fat body of his was a complete lamp. The fire book was completely in line with his Zodiac. At the start of the battle, his whole body emitted a strong yellow light. Under the effect of the dual attribute mutation, his body expanded into a huge ball of flesh with a diameter of more than 4 meters. However, this ball of flesh was filled with yellow energy. That was the energy of the Earth Black Tortoise. Guanjing also knew that his attack power was not strong, so his attack method became very special. He was like a bowling ball that kept rolling around the battlefield. Wherever he passed, as long as it wasn't a powerful soldier with a huge body, the Burning Legion's experts were all crushed by him. However, they couldn't do anything to this meatball at all, who asked him to have a strong defense, like the Black Tortoise. Of course, Guanjing did not roll around randomly. He always maintained a certain area and rolled around his huge sword dragon. The sword dragon's attacks were very strong. Streaks of sword-like energy continuously created huge depressions on the ground. Of course, wherever the huge sword passed, it naturally brought about a reign of terror. Snow Girl, Shangbing, and the Plant Soul were now gathered together. Although the three of them were slightly weaker than the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, when the three of them were together, their strength was so strong that even the strongest Zodiac Guardian Warrior, Ryue, could not possibly be their match. Large patches of frost continuously erupted from the bodies of Snow Girl and her ice beast. Although it was not enough to freeze the hell creatures, it was definitely enough to greatly reduce their combat power. The Overlord Flower and Shangbing, as well as the lightning speed of the Shadow Leopard, became the best weapons to break the ice. One by one, the enemies were destroyed in front of them, and their cooperation became more and more skillful. From the start of the battle until now, most of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors had different degrees of injuries. However, at least 50,000 enemies had died in their hands, and more than 200,000 were injured. Yet, none of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors were seriously injured. This result was enough to make them proud. Only the Zodiac Guardian Warriors could have such a strong ability. Seeing that the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors, Shangbing and Shangbing, gradually gathered at the ancient tree, Chiyu could not help but reveal a satisfied smile on his face. Frankly speaking, Hell's Burning Legion was indeed strong, but there was a very big problem. That was, they did not have enough experts. Of course, this was directly related to the fact that Chiyu had killed dozens of four-winged black generals and 3 dreadlords. Every Zodiac Guardian Warrior had reached the 8-cloud level, and 4 of them had even reached the 9-cloud level. With such a combination, in addition to their messengers and the support of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors, it was impossible for the Burning Legion to directly cause them any harm. It was impossible for the Burning Legion to deal any damage to them. Even if they could destroy the Zodiac Legion, they would have to rely on numbers to grind them to death. However, it was easier said than done. With the ancient tree as the core, everyone could temporarily rest after being injured, and the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors in the air were not to be trifled with. The strength of more than 120 golden-winged eagles could even be compared to the strength of all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors below. A battle of this level would take at least 1 or 2 days. How could everyone's energy be depleted? The ancient tree moved. With its clumsy but determined steps, it walked towards Hell City. With every step it took, at least 1,000 lives of the Hell Legion were lost to the Zodiac Guardian Army. At this moment, the ancient tree was like a huge hedgehog, and the Zodiac Guardian Warriors were the sharp spikes of this hedgehog. Whoever dared to attack them would definitely be met with destruction in return. Yan Xiaoyi suddenly shouted. No one knew when, but he was already standing on the shoulder of the Cyclops. Immediately after, a layer of milky white light soared into the sky and condensed into a milky white ball of light that was more than 3 meters in diameter in midair. In an instant, it illuminated the Zodiac Guardian Warriors below, including those in the ancient tree. After releasing this milky white energy ball, Yan Xiaoyi's expression became visibly weary. In a flash, he had already entered the body of the ancient tree and received the strictest protection. However, although the milky white ball of light in the air could not kill the enemy, its effect was much more terrifying than killing the enemy. Wherever the milky white light passed, the injuries on the bodies of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors would quickly recover at a speed that could be seen with the naked eye. Apart from the ancient tree and the Overlord flower, which were plants and could not be nourished by the milky white ball of light, even the combat strength of the golden-winged eagle army in the air was greatly boosted by the milky white ball of light. What would it feel like to have an army that was no longer afraid of being injured? Satan's expression could not be any uglier. The experts from the East had far exceeded his expectations. Originally, he had hoped to destroy all the humans who were blocking the advancement of Hell City by mobilizing the 500,000 Burning Legion soldiers. However, the other party had only mobilized a little more than 100 people and some monsters, and they had already destroyed nearly 1/5 of the Burning Legion army. The number of injured soldiers was uncountable. At this time, the divine tiger domain that Su Dong had previously released began to play an increasingly important role. After being nourished by the divine fire in the divine tiger domain, the strength of the 150,000 soldiers of the Burning Legion had decreased significantly. Be it in terms of attack or defense, they had fallen to the bottom. Often, the branches that came from the ancient tree could easily kill them, and the number of casualties rose rapidly. In just half an hour, the Zodiac Guardian Army had achieved brilliant results. They had completely charged into the hinterland of the enemy and were advancing towards Hell City. In the distance, Pope Marty, along with his 4 red-cloaked archbishops and thousands of clergymen, stared dumbfoundedly at this scene. Today, when the 500,000 soldiers of the Burning Legion appeared in an overwhelming manner, their hearts had already turned cold. Even Marty and the 4 cardinals, who had just increased their strength, did not doubt the outcome of today's battle. For a period of time, Marty even wanted to suggest to Chiyu to retreat first and then fight the enemy with guerrilla tactics. However, Chi Yu's Zodiac Guardian Army had used their strength to show them what real combat power was. Hell was not scary. What was scary was losing the will to fight. The holy aura continued to gather on the bodies of the sacred army. They were all waiting for Chi Yu's orders. At this time, even Pope Marty had placed himself in the position of Chi Yu's subordinate. The milky white ball of light released by Yan Xiaoyi in the air lasted for a full 20 minutes before it gradually dissipated. And in these 20 minutes, it was also the time when the Zodiac Guardian Army killed the most enemies. At this time, they had already rushed past 2/3 of the distance, and the huge image of Hell City had completely appeared in front of them. However, as the milky white ball of light released by Yan Xiaoyi disappeared, the situation of the battle changed. The pressure seemed to have spread to every Zodiac Guardian Army in an instant. Indeed, the strength of the Zodiac Guardian Army was absolutely tyrannical. Even the 2 six-winged black generals that were holding back Ming Ming had been injured in many places. Under Ming Ming's continuous attacks, it seemed that they would not be able to hold on for much longer. However, the Burning Hell Legion had something that ordinary humans could not compare to. They did not know what retreat was. That's right, when the battle started, the Zodiac Guardian Army had dealt heavy blows to the 500,000 Burning Legion soldiers. However, they did not manage to suppress the will to fight of the 500,000 Burning Legion soldiers. As time went on, the consumption of the Zodiac Guardian Army had reached an extremely terrifying level. However, the Burning Legion was still like the waves of the sea, constantly crashing into their formation. They did not seem to be afraid of death at all. They did not look like they were fighting, but more like they were committing suicide. However, it was this suicidal attack that brought great pressure to the Zodiac Guardian Army. Blood would only make the Burning Legion in Hell even more frenzied. They only wanted to completely destroy the enemies in front of them. They did not care whether they would be hurt or not. As the enemy's counterattack became more and more violent, and as more and more of the Zodiac Guardian Army were seriously injured, the balance of the battle began to tilt. One had to admit that the ancient tree was very useful. Although the giant tree was already riddled with scars, it was precisely because of the existence of the giant tree that the Zodiac Guardian Army's injuries were minimized. At least half of its branches had been broken, and only a small amount of its length was left. However, it continued to hold on. The heavily injured Zodiac Guardian Army and the great golden-winged eagles in the sky would all breathe on the thick branches of the ancient tree. It was the ancient tree that used its body to protect them. That was why the Zodiac Guardian Army had not suffered a single casualty until now. However, the rate at which the Zodiac Guardian Army was decreasing. In particular, the great golden-winged eagles in the sky were the target of all. At least 1/3 of them had returned to the ancient tree, and the remaining great golden-winged eagles' speed and attack power had been greatly reduced. The battle had completely fallen into a disadvantageous situation. Among the 500,000 Burning Legion soldiers, at least 3 million of them still had combat power. Chi Yu couldn't help but sigh as he watched from the sky. That's right. The overall strength of the Zodiac Guardian Army had indeed greatly increased, but there were still too many enemies. As the saying goes, when there are too many ants, they can even bite an elephant to death. If this continued, it would be very difficult for them to break out of the encirclement. Furthermore, it was very likely that they would be fatally injured. That was something that Chi Yu couldn't afford to bear. At this moment, he couldn't help but fantasize. If the 9-star alignment had appeared a little later, all the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors would have been able to reach the 9-cloud level in the 5 elements domain. Then, not to mention the 500,000 Burning Legion soldiers in front of him. Even if 3 million Burning Legion soldiers appeared on the battlefield at the same time, he would definitely be able to fight them. That would be the real battle. The energy in his body quietly gathered. Even if he had to give up on the battlefield in the west, Chi Yu would definitely not let any of his comrades suffer any injuries. To him, the lives of his comrades were the most important. if the battle reached a point where he couldn't bear it anymore. Then, what was the wager with Satan? He would rush out at the first moment and save his comrades. Satan's ugly expression finally relaxed a little. He said proudly, "I have to admit, Chiyu, you Easterners are indeed very strong. So strong that it's beyond my imagination. Unfortunately, everything I said before won't change. No matter how strong you are individually, you can't make up for such a huge difference in numbers. I think you should be very clear on this point. Even though my Burning Legion isn't as elite as it was when it was 100,000 strong after the massive expansion, however, the experts in Hell are definitely not greedy for life and afraid of death. Now, do you still think that they can rush out of my 500,000 soldiers?" Chi Yu said sincerely, "The Burning Legion's combat strength is the strongest army I've ever seen. Even if they know that they are going to die, none of them will retreat. This kind of army is a true iron-blooded army. If it's the same number of soldiers, even if they have the same combat strength, I think that the ones who lose will definitely be us humans. However, Your Majesty Satan, our wager is not over yet. I will not admit defeat before the battle is really over." Satan winked at Lucifer. Lucifer naturally understood what Satan meant. Today's losses were already too great. Obviously, Chi Yu had become their biggest obstacle. If they still couldn't catch Chi Yu and the other Guardians of the East in one fell swoop after such a great loss, then today's losses could be said to be worthless. What Satan needed to do was to prepare the other Burning Legion in Hell City. No matter what the final result of the wager was, he must destroy the Zodiac Legion. At that time, only Chi Yu would be left. Although he was also a great threat, he was only one person after all. He couldn't stop the invasion of Hell at all. Of course, this was only Satan's wishful thinking. Chi Yu slightly narrowed his eyes. Under the guidance of his soul, his mental strength quietly entered the battlefield. Even experts like Satan and Lucifer couldn't detect it. His voice sounded in the minds of every Zodiac warrior almost at the same time. "Break out of the encirclement and leave the rest to me." This simple sentence showed Chi Yu's trust in the Zodiac warriors. At the same time, it was also his own confidence. The situation on the battlefield was always changing. After receiving Chi Yu's instructions, the Zodiac Legion's formation, which was already showing signs of decline, suddenly changed. Ming Ming, who was in midair, let out a loud and clear cry. Her huge phoenix wings instantly stretched out. Two huge fiery red energy rays shot out and once again sent the two six-winged black generals flying. This time, if they wanted to attack again, it would not be so easy. At the same time, Ming Ming turned around and no longer entangled with the enemy. In a flash, she had already arrived above the ancient giant tree. With a flash of red light, the ancient giant tree that was riddled with scars almost disappeared in an instant. The golden-winged eagles that were previously injured also flew up together with their masters. The triangular formation was once again spread out, but this time it was a double triangle. The golden-winged eagle legion, with Vol and Little Pong as the vanguard, formed a triangle in the sky. The remaining 11 Zodiac Guardian warriors and their messengers formed another triangle on the ground. Without the ancient giant tree's large-scale defense, the pressure in the surroundings suddenly increased. However, the Zodiac warriors who had previously been in a decline suddenly broke out. Ming Ming, who had transformed into a vermilion bird, stretched her body in the air. The red light turned back into 9 colors, and a huge light barrier descended from the sky. The range of the light barrier extended infinitely, mainly in front of them. Vermilion bird domain. A cold voice came out of Ming Ming's mouth. The 9-colored light was very strange. Within its range, all the hell creatures temporarily stopped moving and fell into a complete daze. This was because, in their eyes, they could no longer see anything other than the 9-colored light. Immediately after, a change occurred. The intense and dazzling 9-colored light suddenly split apart. Tiny rays of light transformed into 9 colored feathers that gently fluttered in the air. Bloody wounds appeared on almost every hell creature in an instant. Their bodies were instantly sliced apart. Under Ming Ming's control, the feathers that were completely formed by energy instantly became gorgeous, violent and gorgeous. Without the ancient giant tree, although their defense was greatly reduced, at the same time, it also increased the speed of the Zodiac warriors to a terrifying level. There was almost no pause. Every Zodiac warrior rushed out after Ming Ming's domain. Although the Vermilion Bird domain could not cover as large an area as the White Tiger domain, nor could it tear space apart like Ryue's Divine Dragon domain, which could instantly destroy a large number of enemies, the duration of the Vermilion Bird's domain was undoubtedly the longest. With the Vermilion Bird flying in the air as a guide, it actually moved forward slowly. Wherever it went, it was invincible. Ming Ming was in charge of the front, while Guan Ping, who had not fully released his power, stayed behind. Together with his messenger, Jiu Ying, they released their powerful abilities. Guan Ping's domain was very strange. After reaching the 9 clouds level, his domain was actually a sheet of golden light. That sheet of golden light was only a few dozen square meters in size. It was far from being comparable to the Divine Dragon, White Tiger, and Vermilion Bird domains. However, at this moment, its effect was not inferior to those 3 domains. This was because the attribute of Guan Ping's domain was amplification. Pure amplification was also the greatest amplification. Chapter 328. Ming Ming and Guan Ping. The 2 Zodiac warriors who had reached the 9 cloud level were in the front and at the back. They exerted their strength to the limit, while the other Zodiac warriors and the messengers protected the flanks. The group of people rushed forward as fast as they could. The Burning Legion, who had just relieved some of the pressure with great difficulty, could not stop them at all. They could only watch as a large amount of blood spurted out. The enemies in front of them were getting farther and farther away from Hell City. Lucifer's body disappeared under the cover of Satan's huge body. Chi Yu's gaze was on the battlefield, as if he did not notice. Satan's expression became more and more unsightly. The 2 powerful rays of light in front and behind the Zodiac Legion were getting closer and closer to the final sprint. Powerful Easterners. This was the only thought in Satan's mind. At the same time, it was also the reason why he was filled with terror and a desire to destroy. Boom! The Vermilion Bird's domain lasted for a full 10 minutes before it finally dissipated. At least 70% of the Burning Legion soldiers who had been covered by the White Tiger's domain were destroyed by the Vermilion Bird's domain. After all, their defense had been weakened to its lowest state by the White Tiger's domain. How could they possibly resist the Vermilion Bird's domain? The faint light flickered. Chi Yu's gaze gradually became focused. He was quietly waiting for the moment when the final attack was completed. His companions had done everything they needed to do. Then he would be the one to rely on next. Finally, with a loud bang, the 12 Zodiac warriors unleashed their power at the same time and unleashed their most powerful attack. All the Burning Legion soldiers within a radius of several hundred square meters were instantly blown to pieces. They took this opportunity to rush out of the encirclement. At this moment, all the warriors of the Zodiac army were injured. Not a single one of them was uninjured. Not only did they have their own blood on them, but most of it came from their enemies. The piercing attack had caused them to destroy nearly 2/5 of the enemy's strength. That was the number of 200,000 Burning Legion soldiers. No one had expected them to accomplish such a great feat. Even Chi Yu did not expect the Zodiac army to achieve such a brilliant result while breaking through the enemy's formation. In fact, with the strength of the Zodiac Guardian God warriors, if they just wanted to rush over, they would not be able to do so. In that case, he would have to pay much less than he did now. After all, if Ryue and Su Dong hadn't released a large area of effect attack, the 2 of them would have been there. Naturally, he would be able to lead everyone out of the encirclement faster. Your Majesty, you've already lost. Chi Yu glared at Satan. A strange light appeared in Satan's eyes. Is that so? Did I really lose? Qi Yu smiled calmly. Of course. It's time for you to fulfill our bet. While the two of them were talking in the air, the battle below did not end with the Zodiac army's appearance. All the soldiers of the Burning Legion went crazy. They surrounded the Zodiac Legion and charged at them. In the face of these terrifying enemies, they did not show the slightest bit of cowardice. But at this moment, the gates of Hell City opened, and countless Burning Legion soldiers charged out. They pincer attacked from the front and back like an ocean tide. They wanted to destroy these enemies who had just obtained glorious results. Qi Yu seemed to have predicted that Satan would do this. His body had already turned into a shadow, and he pounced on the battlefield. Stay here. Satan snorted coldly. The 12 wings on his back instantly stretched out. He had been preparing for a long time. This was the moment he had been waiting for. A huge, dark red light covered the sky and the earth as it surged toward Qi Yu. No matter how fast Qi Yu was, he could not be faster than the time it took for him to release the Demon King domain. Infinite Transformation, Xuanji Realm Technique. A faint voice came out of Qi Yu's mouth. Suddenly, the same dark red light surged from his body. In the next moment, Satan suddenly felt his vision go black. It was as if he had entered another world. Qi Yu's preparation time was even longer than Satan's. When he shouted the words Infinite Transformation, Xuanji Realm Technique, he had already released his domain. It happened to be a little faster than Satan's release of the Demon King domain. Therefore, when the Demon King domain was released, the Infinite Transformation Xuanji Realm Technique had already come into effect. Therefore, the Demon King domain was released within the Infinite Transformation Xuanji Realm Technique. Sumeru into a mustard seed. Shrink. Qi Yu naturally knew that the Infinite Transformation Xuanji Realm Technique could not trap Satan. However, as long as it could stop him for a while, it would be completely enough. Under the miraculous effect of the Infinite Transformation Xuanji Realm Technique, Satan's Demon King domain instantly shrank in front of him. However, Qi Yu had already disappeared from the dark red light. Not good, Satan secretly exclaimed. The demonic power in his body was raised to the limit at an incomparably powerful speed. He swung the Demon King sword and slashed forward. However, after he released his demonic power, he was shocked to find that the dark red light in front of him did not have the slightest effect on him. Wherever the sword light went, the seemingly powerful domain had already been dissolved. Lanier had also appeared by his side. Sometimes victory or defeat could be decided with a single thought, just like the current situation. When the scenery in front of Satan's eyes opened up again, Qi Yu had already arrived above the Zodiac army. At this moment, the enemies that were surrounding them had already attacked. However, there was a faint smile on Qi Yu's face. Everyone has worked hard. Now you can go back and rest. The 5-colored light descended from the sky like a huge and gorgeous glass dome, enveloping everyone, including the golden-winged Eagle Legion. All the members of the army were completely included. In the next moment, while the hellish creatures were still frantically attacking, they suddenly lost sight of their enemy. Not even a trace was left behind. Qi Yu's body shot up into the sky and returned in front of Satan. He said calmly, "Your Majesty, are you going to break the agreement?" Qi Yu naturally knew that Lucifer had left. Given his strong mind power and his ability to pay attention to the situation, how could he not know that a powerful opponent had suddenly disappeared? Moreover, he had already guessed that Satan would break the agreement after the Zodiac army broke through the barrier. After all, Satan had come from hell, so it was normal for him to go back on his word. Therefore, he had already made preparations. The great transformation of the Jade Pearl Realm was just to confuse Satan. After Qi Yu rushed out, he had already removed the domain. This was also why Satan had been able to break through the domain so easily. By the time Satan saw everything in front of him, the matter had already been resolved. Although many of the soldiers of the Zodiac army had been injured, none of them had died. However, not a single one of them had died, and their enemies had already lost a whopping 200,000 people. Satan's aura fluctuated unstably. His heart, which had finally matured after the incident with Chiyu, was now on the verge of exploding again. As he looked at Chiyu, the light in his eyes became more and more violent, and a surging murderous intent surged out continuously. If he allowed his enemy to destroy a large number of his subordinates and leave without any losses, then it would not just be a matter of damage to his forces. Chiyu, do you think you can defeat the powerhouses of hell like this? Satan looked coldly at Chiyu. He was already prepared to attack at any time. On the other side, Lucifer, who had lost his target, had already flown over. Together with Satan, they seemed to be sandwiching Chiyu in the middle. In the face of such a crisis, Chiyu did not panic. He smiled calmly and said, "Your Majesty, if you want to attack, who can stop you? If you want to attack, who can stop you? However, I just want to ask you a question. Just now, does our bet still count? I think, as the commander of hell, you won't go back on your word." You. Satan looked at Chiyu. He realized that this human from the east in front of him was the real devil. Everything seemed to be within his calculations. From the beginning of the battle until now, he had been at an absolute disadvantage. Of course, the bet still counts. However, when I said that we won't fight for 5 days, I didn't say which 5 days. Now, let me tell you, starting from tomorrow, for 5 days, the Burning Legion will not fight. However, today you must stay, as well as those subordinates of yours. The human army, dozens of miles away, must also be completely destroyed today. My Burning Legion still has 8 million soldiers. Do you think that I will let you go? Chiyu said coldly, "I already guessed that you would do this. Since that's the case, then we can only fight. However, I hope that you won't regret it. Your decision will only bring about greater losses to your subordinates." Satan looked at Chiyu. His body suddenly moved. His huge body did not affect his speed. The 12 wings on his back instantly expanded, and the Demon King's domain was directly activated. Lucifer also moved. He retracted his 8 wings and quietly rushed in the direction of Chiyu. Chiyu smiled indifferently and said, "Since you want to fight, then come. Also, Langair, you can come at me together. Let's see what the 3 of you can do to me." The light on Chiyu's body lit up, and a pure gold armor appeared on his body. 5 colored light gushed out at the same time, and 5 giant dragons suddenly appeared, floating around Chiyu's body to protect him. Lucifer's sneak attack was immediately blocked by the golden dragon of the 5 elements divine dragon. Although it could not defeat Lucifer, it could still block him for a short period of time. Satan, I will let you know the consequences of not keeping to the bet. Just watch. I will let the seal that originally belonged to the canyon of myriad demons return to the human world. Even if I have to risk my life, I will make your army disappear. As he spoke, an illusory figure suddenly floated out of Chi-Yu's body. The figure's appearance was exactly the same as Chi-Yu's, only the eyes were different. The figure that suddenly flew out had a pair of eyes that were even clearer than Chi-Yu's. There was a gentle glint in his eyes, as if everything had nothing to do with him. The moment this figure appeared, it immediately flew in the direction of Hell City. The Burning Legion's army was currently rushing in the direction of the Sacred Legion. However, because of the powerful attack from the Zodiac Legion, they were now quite a distance away from the Sacred Legion. When he saw the figure that separated from Chi-Yu's body, Satan immediately felt that something was wrong. He stretched out his arms, shaking off the 2 divine dragons in front of him, and went straight for Chi-Yu. "Do you want to get past me? Bring it on." The 5 elements divine dragons suddenly split up. They changed their target and rushed directly in the direction of Langair. At the same time, the 4 types of thundercloud force also spread out from Chi Yu's body. The infinite change of the Big Dipper realm technique appeared once again, and a huge amount of energy directly enveloped Satan and Lucifer. The infinite change of the Big Dipper realm technique was naturally unable to stop experts like Satan and Lucifer. However, they needed time to activate their energy to break this realm. However, Chi Yu would not give them this time. In the infinite change of the Big Dipper realm technique, Chi Yu's speed, attack power, and various attributes were all raised to their best state. Having already completely understood the power of the realm, he was like a fish in water in the realm. Just his teleportation alone, which was traceless, made it impossible for Satan and Lucifer to trap him. Chi Yu also did not launch an all-out attack, and simply moved between the two of them. However, Satan and Lucifer could not ignore him. Otherwise, it would definitely be a devastating blow, especially for Lucifer. He knew very well that he could not even take a single blow from Chi Yu. Only by cooperating with Satan could he have a chance of defeating Chi Yu. This time, when using the infinite change of the Big Dipper realm technique, Chi Yu did not block the view of the outside world. The dark red light was transparent, and it was just enough for Satan to see the battle outside. Lumiere was entangled by the 5 elements divine dragons. She was indeed very powerful. With the help of the Devil's Kiss, she had actually killed a divine dragon in such a short period of time. However, the most powerful attribute of the 5 elements divine dragons was immortality. As long as the Kong Tong seal was still there, and as long as there was enough time, the 5 elements divine dragons could resurrect indefinitely. Therefore, it was definitely not an easy task for Lumiere to defeat them. The battle continued, but Satan's gaze soon froze. This was because, through the infinite change of the Big Dipper realm technique, he saw with his own eyes that the other Chi Yu, who had separated from Chi Yu's body, was now floating not far from Hell City. His body had already taken on a bluish-purple color. Although the sky was dark, under the illumination of the numerous energy lights below, everyone could still clearly see a large number of dark clouds floating in the sky. The huge dark clouds flickered with bolts of lightning in the sky, and the huge pressure had already attracted the attention of the Burning Legion below. The flying warriors of the Burning Legion were like moths flying into a flame as they charged toward the other Chi Yu in the sky. However, when they were about 100 meters away from the other Chi Yu, they immediately encountered an invisible barrier. As the bluish-purple light became more and more intense, the energy fluctuations on the other Chi Yu's body reached a terrifying level. "Chi Yu, what are you doing?" Satan and Lucifer stood together and used all their strength to force Chi Yu back. Satan couldn't help but ask in shock when he recalled what Chi Yu had said before. Chi Yu silently appeared 30 meters in front of them and said indifferently, "I just said that you have to pay the price for not complying with the bet. Just wait and see what happened in the Canyon of Demons. It will appear again. Satan, do you still remember the scene when we fought in hell? At that time, my strength wasn't even comparable to yours. However, in the end, you couldn't stop me from escaping because my doppelganger had attacked you. To tell you the truth, I have a domain that belongs to me. It's called the doppelganger domain. When I use this domain, I can separate myself from myself. He has the same intelligence as me and the same strength. Although the doppelganger can exist for a long time, he still has the ability to launch an attack. Now, I've transferred all my lightning attribute energy to him. Just wait and see. He'll let you know what the world's catastrophe is. That's right. It'll be very difficult for me to defeat you and Lucifer, but don't think that you can easily escape from the battlefield. You might be able to resist the power of the lightning ball for a while, but can your subordinates do it?" Listening to Chi Yu's words, Satan and Lucifer couldn't help but have their complexions change. They naturally knew how terrifying the lightning ball above the Canyon of Demons was. Now that they heard it from Chi Yu, they knew that the catastrophe was coming. Chi Yu's doppelganger, or rather, Wen Ting, quickly proved Chi Yu's words with her actions. The dark clouds in the sky had already completely shrouded the Hell City below. Shortly after, a blue light suddenly appeared. In just a flash, it came to the ground. Satan was all too familiar with this form. That's right, it was a lightning ball. The ones who had the greatest reaction were the 3,000 experts from hell who had come out of the myriad fiends' gorge. Even Satan had to admit that these 3,000 fellows were the strongest part of the Burning Legion. Previously, when facing the attack of the Zodiac Legion, these experts had cunningly hidden at the back and didn't suffer too many losses. They also didn't fear the Zodiac Legion. But now it was different. Suddenly seeing the lightning ball that had imprisoned them for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years, suddenly appear in the mortal world, their only feeling was that their souls had flown out of their bodies. Without any hesitation, they let out shrill screams and fled in all directions. They quickly fled into the distance, not even daring to return to Hell City. The lightning ball showed its might. A huge blue ball of light suddenly exploded in midair, right next to Wen-Ting. The flying hell creatures that were attacking Wen-Ting didn't even have a chance to resist the lightning ball that was filled with the energy of heaven and earth. They were completely turned into ashes. The thunderclouds in the sky became more and more intense. No one could see the changes clearly, but the blue lightning became more and more obvious. Chi-Yu stretched out 2 fingers and smiled at Satan. Next time it'll be 2. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 huge lightning balls descended from the sky and blasted into the crowd below in the blink of an eye. In midair, the bluish-purple light on Wen-Ting's body became even more eye-catching, and the energy on her body was also filled with a violent aura. 2 huge craters appeared on the ground. Wherever the energy passed, the land was completely scorched. Even the Burning Legion's hell creatures were turned into a part of the scorched land. The powerful energy aura filled every soldier of the Burning Legion with fear. Before this, the Zodiac Legion had only been made up of manpower. However, the lightning that descended from the sky now exceeded the scope of their understanding. The 2 huge lightning balls took the lives of at least thousands of soldiers of the Burning Legion. As the lightning balls bombarded the most densely packed areas, more soldiers of the Burning Legion fell into a state of paralysis. Chi-Yu's 2 fingers had already become 4. Each time it will double. For lightning balls descended from the sky and once again verified his words. Satan's psychological defenses finally collapsed at this moment. He suddenly felt that the human in front of him was so invincible that even his fighting spirit seemed to have been shattered by the bombardment of the lightning balls descending from the sky. All right, I'll abide by the bet. 5 days. I'll give you 5 days to continue preparing. Lucifer announced the retreat. Lucifer's voice spread far and wide. Even without Chi-Yu's obstruction, Lucifer definitely wouldn't dare to rush towards Wen-Ting's incarnation of Chi-Yu. He wasn't confident that he could withstand the bombardment of the lightning balls. The 4 lightning balls had already caused even more damage to the Burning Legion below. Lucifer's order to retreat finally freed these soldiers. They retreated frantically towards Hell City at a speed that was almost twice as fast as when they had come. Even their original formation had become scattered. After all, these soldiers that Satan had gathered could not compare to the original 100,000 elite Burning Legion. They might not be afraid of death, but they were not afraid of death. Perhaps they weren't afraid of death, but they definitely didn't want to be bombarded to death by the lightning for no reason. Chi-Yu didn't look at Satan again. His figure flashed and merged with Wen-Ting once again. Although the dark clouds in the sky still existed, the light of the lightning had clearly weakened a lot. Satan flew past Chi-Yu with Lucifer and Langaire. He looked at him with eyes full of hatred. All right, Chi-Yu, once again. You've once again made me fail in front of you, but this will definitely be the last time. Chi-Yu said proudly, if you have the confidence to destroy me, I'll be waiting for you in 5 days. The Burning Legion retreated back to Hell City like a tide. The dark red light once again enveloped this city that belonged to Hell. The lightning balls in the sky also gradually disappeared. Chiyu's face suddenly became much paler. His figure flashed, and he returned to the camp of the Holy Church's Sacred Legion. Your Holiness, continue to monitor the Burning Legion's movements here. They probably won't move for the next 5 days, but it's better to be careful. I'll first find a place to rest. You don't need to look for me. As long as Satan appears again, I'll naturally rush back. After saying this, Chiyu's figure had already disappeared in front of Pope Marty. Ting, that was really dangerous, just now. It seems that having more people is still a great advantage. Sitting on a quiet hill, Chiyu sighed and muttered to himself. At this moment, his face had already gradually regained its rosy color, when Ting's voice sounded in his heart. Yes, it seems that Satan was really scared by you. Chiyu laughed and said, No, he wasn't scared by me. He was scared by the lightning balls. After all, that was a powerful seal that had troubled hell for who knows how many years. When Ting asked curiously, Chiyu, how did you know that Satan would announce a retreat when the 4 lightning balls fell? If he didn't retreat at that time, what should we do? Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, I didn't even know that he would announce a retreat at that time. If he didn't choose to retreat, then we could only fight with our lives on the line. If we fight with our lives on the line, even if I'm seriously injured, I'm confident that I can destroy Lucifer. At that time, we'll just retreat first, and those people from the church won't be able to care about them for the time being. Fortunately, this isn't our country, isn't it? You, what should I say about you? Chiyu smiled indifferently and said, That's right, I'm indeed very selfish. Ting, you have to understand that I can't risk my life and the lives of my companions to resist Satan. That in itself is also meaningless, and the outcome will not change. But if I preserve our strength and use our strength to harass Satan, or find an opportunity to kill Satan, the crisis of hell's descent will be easily resolved, isn't it? Wan Ting chuckled and said, All right, I can't win against you in an argument, but this time you've used up too much energy. Hurry up and recover first. Moreover, Ming and the rest's injuries will also depend on your strength. It turned out that when the final battle started, Chiyu didn't have any bargaining chips in his hands. However, he relied on his psychological advantage and deceived Satan with the doppelganger domain. The doppelganger domain could indeed have the same energy as him. After his thundercloud force was raised to near the peak realm, the doppelganger could also stay outside for a longer period of time. However, if he wanted to release a super energy like the ball lightning, even Chiyu's main body would have to consume a large amount of thundercloud force. Using the doppelganger domain to activate it, the current limit was only 7 balls. Chiyu was already prepared. If Satan wasn't deceived by him, then the next ones to attack would be the Sacred Army. He would also try his best to destroy Lucifer first. In any case, it was impossible for Satan to capture or destroy him. Satan sat quietly on his throne in Hell City and didn't say a word. His eyes became extremely calm, so calm that Lumiere and Lucifer felt a strong sense of fear. They all knew that today's battle had dealt a huge blow to Satan. Satan slowly raised his head and said to Lucifer, Contact Hades for me. I have something to say to him. Yes, Your Majesty. Chapter 329. Satan slowly raised his head and said to Lucifer, Contact Hades, the underworld king. I have something to say to him. Yes, Your Majesty. As Lucifer chanted, a faint gray light condensed in the air, forming a mirror-like energy fluctuation. After a while, the energy light gradually became clear, and a handsome face quietly appeared in the mirror. Oh, it's Your Majesty, Satan. May I know why you are looking for me? Could it be that you have encountered trouble on your side? Satan said in a deep voice, Are you gloating, Hades? I'm afraid that it's not easy on your side either. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been limited to a small area in America. Although Satan was in Germany, it didn't mean that he didn't know about Hades' situation. Hades' expression changed slightly, and he said, Athena is the complete Athena in this world. It's not just the energy of the inheritance. Lord Satan, I also want to question you. Satan said faintly, so you're really in trouble? Hades nodded and said, although the real Athena is slightly inferior to me in terms of strength, she is a very annoying force when she joins forces with her constellation guardians. 2 of my underworld generals have already died in their hands. Although they are no match for me, how can I conquer America if they keep harassing me? I need time. Satan hesitated for a moment, but his gaze quickly became firm. Hades, bring your people and come to my side. Hades was slightly taken aback at first. Then a strange look appeared in his eyes. Come to where? Satan, I don't understand what you mean. Satan stood up and paced back and forth in the room. He only stopped after he had paced back and forth 3 times. To tell you the truth, the trouble I am in is much bigger than yours. If I want to occupy Earth, I must first solve the problem I am facing. Otherwise, it will be difficult for me to advance. Once the trouble I am facing comes to you, you will only end up destroyed. Hades looked at Satan in surprise. Why, you and your burning legion can't even deal with those so-called clowns from the Vatican? Those guys are only the representatives of heaven in the natural world. I don't believe that they can obstruct you. A bloodthirsty light flashed in Satan's eyes, and he slowly shook his head. No, of course it's not those clowns from the Vatican. It's a powerhouse from the East on Earth. Hades, you should know that before the various planes really appeared, the powerhouses that appeared in the East on Earth were simply too strong for us to deal with, although they were all destroyed in the end. However, the power they had left behind was still very powerful. What I'm facing now is an enemy who's more powerful than me and his subordinates. With him working together with the church, I can't do anything here. Hearing Satan's voice getting louder and louder, Hades' expression changed slightly. Although he was worried that Satan was deceiving him and wanted to lure him over to destroy him. However, he was very clear that Satan was a very arrogant person, just like himself. At their level, there was no need to use deception to do anything. That was something that their dignity did not allow them to do. A faint light flashed. Satan's eyes revealed a trace of tyrannical radiance. He clearly saw the hesitation in Hades' eyes. A dark red radiance pierced directly from his eyes into the gray mirror in front of him. He used his spiritual energy to transmit everything he had recorded on the battlefield to Hades. The silence lasted for more than half an hour. From the gray mirror, it could be seen that the light in Hades' eyes had become more and more surprised. His expression also became more and more serious. Obviously, he did not expect Satan to face such a powerful enemy. At the same time, he also understood why Satan called him over. After a long time, when everything on the battlefield had been deeply imprinted in Hades' mind, his voice had become much sharper. Humans can actually have such powerful strength. Satan, it seems that we were all wrong. Perhaps we should not have come to this world at all. Satan said in a deep voice, It's too late to say anything now. Even if you want to withdraw, I'm afraid it's too late. Are you willing to give up on this fat piece of earth? Actually, the situation is not as bad as you think. The reason why I can't do anything to those human experts from the East is mainly because more than half of my subordinates have already been injured. Back then, the leader of the Eastern human, Chiyu, had destroyed a large number of 4-winged black generals in hell. As long as you can come over and combine our strength, I think it won't be a problem to destroy him. As long as these Eastern experts are destroyed by us, there will be no one in this world who can stop us from moving forward. Hades hesitated. But are you really confident that you can do it? I saw it too. That human only released a clone at the end. Yet he managed to destroy so many of your subordinates. Furthermore, all of his subordinates are so powerful. Even my netherworld general would not be able to defeat them one-on-one. Satan, Are you trying to make use of me? Satan snorted coldly. I'm not that senseless. If I could do it, do you think that I would have invited you over? I, Satan, the demon king of hell, swear by the purple sun of hell that if Hades and I can destroy the experts in the east of Earth, then after we occupy Earth in the future, I am willing to give half of the territory to Hades to control and not to invade. If I violate this oath, the purple sun will explode and hell will be destroyed. After listening to Satan's vow, Hades was instantly moved. To hell creatures, Hades' expression changed. This was definitely the most vicious oath. At this moment, he no longer had any doubts about Satan's words. He nodded and said, "All right then, I will immediately meet up with you. Although that human is powerful, there are still very few of them. This is good too. Let's gather all the experts on Earth together and destroy them. This will save us trouble in the future." Satan's eyes flashed coldly. "Before you come, don't alarm those Greek guardians. It's best if we can destroy all the humans in the East before the Greek guardians arrive. This way, we can achieve our goal of destroying them one by one. Who else can stop us from moving forward?" Hades smiled slightly. His very feminine face looked very charming. "As long as your Majesty Satan does not forget your promise." In terms of strength, he knew that there was still a gap between the underworld and hell. There were many creatures in hell. If they really relied on their own strength to occupy Earth, at least 2/3 of Earth's area would belong to hell. At this time, Satan was willing to use half of Earth's territory to cooperate with him. This was enough to satisfy Hades. Satan nodded to Lucifer. The spiritual power that Lucifer released changed, and the specific location of Hell City was transmitted to Hades. The cooperation between the two sides was reached. Naturally, Chi-Yu did not know that Satan had invited Hades over because of the strength of him and the Zodiac army. At this time, he was quietly cultivating in a quiet place. The energy in his body was gradually recovering by relying on the energy of the origin of nature. With the energy of the source of nature, he had recovered nearly 2/3 of his previous consumption. Chi-Yu. A low voice woke Chi-Yu from his state of cultivation. The voice came from within his body. It was Yinling, big brother Yinling. What's wrong? Chi-Yu asked in surprise. The Kongtong seal had recognized him as its master for a long time, but Yinling rarely took the initiative to find him. Something must have happened. Could it be that one of his companions in the Zodiac army was exhausted? Yinling said in a low voice, "Enter the 5 elements field. I will ask the 5 elements divine dragon to protect your body. Your friend needs you." Chi-Yu did not ask any more questions. He hurriedly, completely integrated his spiritual power with his soul and directly entered the 5 elements field. The Zodiac warriors were all standing quietly at this time. Their injuries had obviously recovered a little. In the center of the more than 100 Zodiac warriors, a huge ancient tree was standing there. Compared to the previous battle, the ancient tree seemed to have deteriorated a lot. At least 80% of its huge body's branches had been broken, and its originally surging life aura had now become a dying breath. A layer of black light appeared all over its body. Corrosion and all kinds of negative dark energy were constantly moving rhythmically on its huge body. What's going on? Chi-Yu entered the 5 elements field and saw this situation. He hurriedly flew forward. Everyone saw that Chi-Yu had come. They immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Ming Ming's eyes glistened with tears. She rushed to Chi-Yu in a big stride. "Chi-Yu, you must save it. In order to protect all of us, it has released almost all of its vitality. In the battle, it also suffered the most damage. He has endured countless attacks from the Burning Legion's dark energy, and now he can't hold on any longer. Even the plant soul sister can't save his life. I can clearly feel that his life mark is gradually disappearing, and I can't even contact him anymore." Chi-Yu's gaze turned towards the plant soul. The plant soul solemnly nodded its head and said, My plant energy has no effect on him. He has suffered too many darkness attacks, and his body is already too concentrated with too much darkness energy. If this continues, he will die in at most an hour. Brother Chiyu, I'm afraid only you can save its life." Just as Mingming had said, the ancient tree had played a huge role in the Zodiac army's success today. His large-scale defense had protected everyone and reduced the number of attacks they suffered to a minimum. It was also because of this that he had suffered the most damage. Chiyu did not speak. He floated in front of the ancient tree, stretched out a hand, and pressed on its thick trunk. His mental strength mixed with the aura of the soul floated out and instantly enveloped the entire ancient tree. Soon, his mental strength transmitted the ancient tree's information back to him. Indeed, just as the plant soul had said, the ancient tree had suffered terrible damage. Its life mark was constantly being eroded by the dark energy, and it was about to wither away as the end of its life. If it was someone else, of course, they would not be able to deal with this. However, Chi was different. One of his strongest abilities was the origin of nature. With the origin of nature, how could he let the ancient tree be sacrificed for no reason? The green light quietly entered the ancient tree. At the same time, a layer of blue light was released from Chiyu's body and completely enveloped the ancient tree. "Destroy!" With a low roar, the blue light surrounding the ancient giant tree instantly exploded. Immediately, waves of thunderous roars resounded. Countless lightning bolts surrounded the ancient giant tree's body, emitting bursts of rumbling sounds. The enormous lightning energy instantly bombarded the ancient giant tree's body into a charred state. "Chiyu, what are you doing?" Ming cried out and had already pounced on the ancient tree. Suddenly, her arm tightened and her body was pulled back into a warm embrace. Ruyue's voice rang in Ming's ear. "Leave it to him. Don't you believe in his ability?" Ming raised her head and looked at Ruyue with teary eyes. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she held back in the end. The charred ancient tree had already stopped trembling. It stood there, as if it had lost all signs of life. His body had been charred black by the lightning bolts, and the branches were rapidly falling off, turning into charcoal as they fell to the ground and turned into ashes. When the Zodiac warriors who had been protected by him saw this scene, they couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in their hearts. How could they not be sad when their comrade in battle had become like this? Moreover, the ancient tree was like their mother. It had always been protecting them. The dark green light continued to flow from Chiyu's palms into the charred tree trunk. As the branches gradually fell off, a layer of faint green light appeared on the tree trunk. The huge ancient tree only had a bare trunk left standing. Moreover, 1/3 of the trunk had already been destroyed in the roar of lightning. A strange scene appeared when everyone was worried. The ancient tree that had stopped showing signs of life suddenly trembled slightly, as if it was trying to break free from something. Not long after, the top of the huge trunk began to grow. Even the trunk began to expand. Although the speed of expansion was very slow, it was very obvious because the charcoal on the trunk fell off as it expanded. The brown trunk reappeared. Moreover, it had a much more vigorous life force than before. The huge ancient tree grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. First, the trunk grew to its original height and even exceeded it a little. Then, thick branches began to separate from its body. The separation speed was very fast. Every time there was an energy fluctuation, at least 10 branches would separate. Moreover, these branches were still separating for the second time. In this way, the ancient tree's body was rejuvenated. After an unknown period of time, when everyone was completely dumbfounded by the spectacle in front of them, the ancient tree had completely returned to its original form. In fact, it was even larger than before, and its life aura had also become denser. Great origin of nature, thank you for pulling me back from the brink of death. The old voice was filled with respect and sincere gratitude. Retracting his hands, Chi smiled and said, "Senior, we should be the ones thanking you. If it wasn't for you, perhaps my companions would have suffered great harm today. I'm already very sorry that you had to bear the corrosion of the dark energy. But don't worry, as long as your life imprint still exists. I have the confidence to restore you to your original appearance. Moreover, if I don't restore you, I'm afraid that Ming Ming will fight with me." As he spoke, Chi Yu's smiling gaze subconsciously fell on Ming Ming. Ming Ming blushed and said in a low voice, "You're so annoying. You only know how to scare people. Can't you just help the ancient tree to recover?" Chi Yu pretended to be aggrieved. He said, "Why don't I want to help it recover? However, you must understand that Senior Ancient Tree's body has already been completely contaminated by the darkness energy. If I don't first remove the darkness energy from his body, even if I manage to restore his body, the darkness energy will still destroy him. Only by using the righteous energy of the world and the huge amount of lightning energy to dispel the dark energy can it better restore its body and allow it to be reborn. Previously, when I launched the lightning energy bombardment, I already used the aura of the origin of nature to protect the senior's life imprint. It should have been fine. This is called being too concerned and confused." Ming Ming snorted and ignored Chi Yu. She floated to a branch of the ancient tree and leaned on it like a daughter leaning on her father's embrace. Her eyes were full of joy. Chi Yu's gaze swept across the Zodiac warriors and said with gratification, "Everyone has used your actions to prove your strength. It seems that the cultivation in the 5 elements domain has not been in vain. If it wasn't for your courage, I'm afraid that today's situation would not have ended so easily. Everyone start cultivating. I will continue to transfer the aura of the origin of nature into the 5 elements domain. It will help you recover your strength. Cultivation cannot be stopped, at least not before the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors reach the 9th cloud level. If everyone can reach the 9th cloud level, then don't even talk about Satan. Even if 2 or 3 of them come, we can easily deal with them." The members of the 12 Zodiac teams were already used to listening to Chi Yu's orders. As soon as they heard his words, they immediately dispersed and went to the most suitable 5 elements mountain to cultivate. However, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors stayed behind. Ruyua walked to Chi Yu's side and took the initiative to hold his hand. She exclaimed, "This really is a magical place. I originally thought that I would need at least a year to break through my bottleneck, but I didn't expect that I would break through here. Everyone's strength has increased very quickly. The lower your strength, the more obvious the effect. Now, all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors have reached the 8th cloud level. We've all reached above the 8 clouds. Me, Ming Ming, Su Dong, and Guan Ping have all reached the 9 clouds realm. We have our own domain. I believe that it won't be long before each of us can reach the 9th cloud level. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Zodiac Guardian domain will look like when everyone reaches the 9th cloud level. Those Greek guardians can no longer be compared to us. If the battle at Mount Everest happens again, I'm afraid that they will immediately be destroyed by us." Chi Yu nodded. "I won't forget what happened back then. Once the matters in hell and the underworld are settled, it will be time for us to settle the score with the Greek guardians." "Chi Yu!" Ruyue suddenly called out to Chi Yu. Her gaze also became much gentler. Chi Yu was stunned. "What's wrong?" Ruyue said, "Actually, those Greek guardians are not all bad people. I've discussed it with Snow Girl. There are only 3 real enemies: Yamu, Yuyun, and Pote Marty. Everything that happened in the past happened because of them. So, when dealing with the Greek guardians, can we let the others go?" Chi Yu let out a long sigh. "No, you're missing one person. There's still me. If I wasn't so stupid that I couldn't see through Yama's plan, I wouldn't have implicated the Emperor's heart, Snow Lotus King, Brother Klinsman, and Wen Ting." Pain flashed through his eyes. Although it had been a long time, he could never forget what had happened back then. "Chi Yu, don't be like this. In that situation, anyone would have fallen for it. Snow Girl had already come to Chiyu's side and comforted him softly. The moment she mentioned her father, her gaze became much dimmer. Chiyu took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. A smile appeared on his face. All right, let's not talk about these things for now. At the very least, we have to wait until we solve the problems caused by the alignment of the 9 stars before we get involved in my personal grudges. All right, everyone, continue with your training. I have to go out and take charge of the situation. Marty can't, after all. His sacred army can't stop the Burning Legion. 5 days should be enough for everyone to recover and improve. It should be enough for everyone to recover and improve. However, you still have to be ready to fight at any time. Ryue, I'll leave the tactical arrangements to you. 5 days passed by quickly. This time, Satan kept his promise. The Hell City did not send a single soldier outside the Hell City again. The rare peace gave everyone a chance to recuperate. Silver weapons from various European Union countries arrived one after another. By the time they reached the outskirts of Berlin, the number of European Union troops had reached more than 1 million. One had to know, in a war that was dominated by modern technology, the number of soldiers reaching 1 million was definitely a very terrifying thing. Moreover, they were all heavy weaponry troops. All kinds of long-range firepower were firmly aimed in the direction of Hell City. As soon as the order was given, the carpet bombing could immediately begin. Standing at the forefront of the battlefield and looking at the majestic Hell City in the distance, Chiyu couldn't help but reveal a trace of a pondering look in his eyes. 5 days had passed. His strength had naturally recovered to its peak. Hell City was very quiet. Only the dark red energy protection light remained. Within the city, Ming Ming had millions of soldiers from the Burning Hell Legion, but they didn't make the slightest sound. This situation made Chiyu feel a little uneasy, because the silence in Hell City was a little frightening. According to the time on Earth, it should be night now. Although it had been a few days since day and night were separated as an Earthling, Chiyu was still used to judging the time. In a few more hours, the 5 days of truce in Hell City would be over. What was Satan doing now? After all, the Burning Legion was a terrifying existence. Just from the way they fought without fear of death, it was enough to show all of this, although they had already destroyed 200,000 of them. But the entire Burning Legion still had a total of 8 million soldiers. No matter how strong the Zodiac Legion was, they only had a little more than 100 people. Once Satan attacked with all his strength, then he could only choose to strategically retreat. This time, the battle with Hell would probably last for a long time. At this moment, Chiyu really missed his Xianyuan sword. His strength had already increased to a level that surpassed Satan's. If only he had the Xianyuan sword by his side. Chiyu believed that if he went all out, it would be very difficult for Satan and Lucifer to survive his attack. The attack power of the Xianyuan sword, coupled with his super strong energy, would be a perfect attack. Unfortunately, Xuanyuan's soul was still sleeping in Xuanyuan's tomb, waiting for him to wake it up with the heavenly fire. But how would he have the time to look for the heavenly fire now? At least on Earth, there was no place that could raise his fire thundercloud force to such a level. Chi-Yu was letting his imagination run wild. Suddenly, his mental strength fluctuated slightly. The gaze in his eyes suddenly became like 2 sharp blades, looking in a direction. Come out. If it weren't for the fact that you're not hostile, I'm afraid you would have been destroyed by now. Along with Chi-Yu's voice, a purple figure quietly appeared not far away from him. Seeing this person, Chi-Yu couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. I thought you were in Hell City. It was none other than the Queen of the Vampires, Christie. Christie's pale face revealed a faint smile. How is that possible? I will never stand on the opposite side of you. You should be very clear about this. Chi-Yu smiled and walked to Christie's side. He looked at her from head to toe. Her aura was obviously somewhat unstable. It seemed to be the result of a large amount of energy consumption. but it didn't seem like it was caused by a battle. Chi, you didn't ask much. The gentle energy of the origin of nature directly entered Christie's body and quickly restored her energy. Christie smiled. You're still so attentive, thank you. It took me 4 whole days to fly back. I'm really tired. Chi, you was a little puzzled. Why aren't you in Hell City? I heard that after you unified all the vampire families, the Dark Parliament seemed to attach great importance to you. They even arranged a very high position for you in the Dark Parliament. Christie snorted disdainfully. Even if I inherited the bloodline of vampires, I never thought of myself as a person belonging to the dark side. Is that how you see me? Chi-Yu smiled. How can that be? We were classmates in the past. Christie rolled her eyes at Chi-Yu. She seemed to recall what happened between her and Chi-Yu. The Dark Parliament did look for me. When the weather suddenly changed and the earth was shrouded in darkness, the Dark Parliament informed me that hell had descended on the human world. He asked me to lead the powerhouses of the vampire families to the Dark Parliament. I had a bad feeling at that time. I tried to contact you once, but I couldn't get in touch with you. After thinking for a long time, I made up my mind not to let the vampires participate in this war. After all, compared to those fellows from hell, the vampires are still too weak. So, after I hid all my subordinates, I ran here alone to meet up with you. The vampires may not help you, but I, Christie, am your friend. Naturally, I will stand on your side. Thinking about what Christie said before, Chi-Yu's heart moved. He said in surprise, You didn't send your vampires to Yen Huang, did you? Christie smiled. You're really smart. I haven't even said it, and you've already guessed it. Chi-Yu smiled bitterly. Christie, you're really getting more and more daring. Aren't you afraid that your vampires will cause trouble in Yen Huang? Christie said proudly they won't dare, unless they want to challenge my dignity. Before sending them over, I had already asked around. The war only happened in the West. There were no changes in the Yen Huang Republic, so I naturally chose to send them to my motherland. Don't worry, I've already told them. If they dare to do anything, it'll be their doomsday when I return. Furthermore, don't forget that the experts from the various clans all have my blood in them. You should have heard of the blood transmutation virus. At the prince rank and above, the blood division virus had its own password. Well, it was more appropriate to describe it as a password. Although the experts of the great clans had greatly increased their strength with the help of my primordial blood, they were also under the control of the blood division virus. If anyone dared to betray me, then the blood division virus in their bodies would activate. At that time, they would definitely suffer a fate worse than death. So, these guys are very loyal to me now, even more loyal than they were to Klinsman. Chapter 330. Christie, you should return to Yen Huang. You shouldn't have participated in this battle. Chi, you looked at Christie dotingly. Ever since Klinsman's death, he felt more like an elder brother to Christie. He wished he could take care of her like Klinsman did, just like how he took care of his younger sister. Christie said with dissatisfaction, What? Are you looking down on my strength? Chi, you shook his head. No, of course not. In terms of individual strength, you aren't any weaker than the chairman of the Dark faction. But you have to understand that we're facing an army of close to 3 million soldiers from the Burning Legion. A person's strength is ultimately limited. Moreover, you belong to the Dark faction, and your dark energy is limited against the powerhouses of the Dark faction. Besides, Chi-Yu paused and looked deeply at Christie. You have to leave a way out for yourself. Christie asked in surprise, What? Do you think I'll be in cahoots with the Dark faction? Since I'm here today, I haven't considered the consequences. If we really fail this time, the entire world will be plunged into darkness. What's the point of my personal loss? Chi, you looked deeply into Christie's eyes. All right then, you can stay. Since you're here, train with my companions. It'll be beneficial for you to improve your strength. The 5-colored radiance expanded and absorbed Christie's body. Her arrival increased Chi Yu's strength by a lot. The multicolored light expanded and sucked Christie's body in. Her arrival had imperceptibly increased the power in Chi Yu's hands. Christie had become the queen of the blood clan. Her strength wasn't much weaker than Lanier's. She could definitely be considered a super powerhouse. A few hours passed by quickly, and the time agreed upon in the bet was about to arrive. However, there were still no movements in Hell City. Looking at this scene, Chi Yu couldn't help but feel worried. The Sacred Army was already in formation behind him. After a few days, the strength of the entire Sacred Army had increased by a few notches. The church's powerhouses who had rushed over from churches all over the world had formed a sacred army of more than 10,000 people. Under Marty's leadership, it was at least a strong force. Mr. Chi, why haven't they made a move yet? Malty asked Chi Yu nervously. Chi Yu smiled faintly. Do you really want them to make a move? Satan must have made some special preparations. Your Holiness the Pope immediately informed the armies of the various countries to prepare for carpet bombing. When the time comes, I will try my best to hold Satan back. He wanted to minimize his protection of the Burning Legion. Hopefully, these weapons from Earth would be of some use. When the 8 million strong army arrives, we can only choose to retreat. Understood. Malty immediately contacted the Allied forces. Now, in a certain sense, Chi Yu was the true leader of the Allied forces. At the very least, before he gave the order, the Allied forces would definitely not make any rash moves. Suddenly, Malty, who was in contact with the Allied forces, had a drastic change in expression. This is bad, Mr. Chi. We've suddenly lost contact with the Allied forces. Chi Yu's eyes lit up. What did you say? We've lost contact with the Allied forces? This is bad. Satan must have sent someone to infiltrate the Allied forces. Strange. Why didn't I discover it? Could it be that Satan went by himself again? At the thought of this, Chi Yu's heart instantly turned cold. Satan was no longer as rash as before. Without the support of the Allied forces, how could it be easy to go against the Burning Legion? What filled Chi Yu's heart with horror was that Satan was actually able to deal with the Allied forces without making a sound. This was something he had never expected. At this moment, there was finally movement from the direction of Hell City. A large area of green flames lit up in the sky, and countless hell creatures of the Burning Legion flew out of Hell City like rain. In an orderly formation, they slowly approached them. The Burning Legion's advance was not fast, but there was an endless stream of them coming out of Hell City. As the Burning Legion approached, the formless pressure grew stronger and stronger. Chi Yu's face had already lost some of his previous confidence. What made Chi Yu's heart sink was that when the Burning Legion was about 3,000 meters away from them, he saw Satan and Lucifer's figures in the air. They were actually still there and did not sneak attack the Allied forces. Then, how was the Allied forces destroyed? Could it be that there were powerhouses of that level in the Hell camp? A faint light flickered, and the light in Chi Yu's eyes became more and more concentrated. He knew that he could not go to the Allied forces to find out what was going on. Otherwise, Marty and his sacred army would definitely not be able to resist the Burning Legion led by Satan. At this moment, the only thing he could do was to stay here and do his best to bring as much harm to the Burning Legion as possible. This was the only way to slow down the Burning Legion's invasion of humans. Zodiac army, step forward. A colorful light surged out of Chi Yu's body, and the Zodiac army, which had rested for 5 days, reappeared by his side. There were more than 100 of them, and every one of them had fully recovered their strength. With Chi Yu's natural source energy, the injuries they had suffered previously were nothing. Their appearance also boosted the morale of Chi Yu's side. After all, most of the Sacred Army members had seen the strength of the Zodiac army. Chi Yu nodded at Snow Girl and said, "The 12 Zodiac squad will be temporarily under your command. I will temporarily leave it to you, Shangbing, the Plant Soul, and Christie to manage it. You must always remember your own safety. Prioritize your own safety. If you can't withstand the enemy's attack, retreat immediately. Understood? Snow Girl naturally understood Chiyu's meaning, so she nodded gently. Chiyu's gaze fell on the other Zodiac guardian warriors, and a trace of arrogance shot out from his eyes. Zodiac guardian warriors, follow me to battle. Chiyu didn't fly up. He took large strides and walked in the direction of the Burning Legion. At this moment, the aura he exuded was absolutely unwavering. It was definitely the kind of feeling that he would never give in to a million people. Although he was alone, in the eyes of the crowd behind him, Chiyu was extremely lofty. The 12 Zodiac guardian warriors stepped forward at the same time. Following behind the king of the Zodiac, everyone's faces were calm. They knew that this day would come sooner or later. If the previous battle with the Burning Legion was just a small test, then today would be the real battle. Although it wasn't a fight to the death, but this battle was extremely important to humans. If they won, then Hell's morale would be greatly suppressed, and it would be difficult for them to achieve anything. But if they lose, they will. In that case, the West would probably be ravaged by the Burning Legion for a long period of time. Chi-Yu's steps were firm. Seeing that the dark aura in front of him was getting stronger and stronger, he didn't hesitate at all. Faint rays of light were constantly released from his body, and layers of valiant energy erupted. Silver and black rays of light soared into the sky, and a huge shadow of Kirin appeared in midair. The faint rays of light flickered, and Chi-Yu's gaze became more and more ferocious. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Satan!" With Lucifer and Langair's support, Satan's huge figure appeared in front of the Burning Legion in a few flashes. He raised his hand, and the orderly Burning Legion stopped in their tracks. His huge body landed on the ground, and a huge energy aura gushed towards Chiyu. "Chiyu, do you think you still have a chance today? I'll give you one last chance. Surrender. As long as you're willing to help me wipe out all the resistance forces on Earth, then I'll marry my daughter to you. You have to understand that my position will be inherited by my daughter from now on, and everything she has will naturally be yours. Don't you want to be the ruler of Earth?" When Langair heard that her father might marry her to Chiyu, the gaze in her eyes clearly brightened a lot. However, when she heard the latter part of his words, the expression on her face immediately became gloomy again. This was because she knew that Chiyu would never agree to it. Chiyu smiled indifferently and said, "Let's see who's the real deal. Satan, if I destroy you and Lucifer here first, then what do you think will happen to your Burning Legion?" A cold light flashed in Satan's eyes, and he said in a deep voice, "Even if the Burning Legion only has one soldier left, they will still wipe out Earth and turn this place into our world. Since you've already chosen your own path, then let me send you to the heavenly realm or the God realm." With a wave of his hand, the Burning Legion, which was still advancing slowly before, let out a torrential roar at the same time. They charged wildly like rolling thunder, causing the ground to rumble. The huge energy waves caused the entire battlefield to tremble. The Burning Legion's real attack had arrived. This time, it wasn't just a portion of their military strength. Satan had already staked everything on this battle today. 12 Zodiac, Guardian Domain. Chi-Yu's expression became very calm. He instantly took a step back and integrated into the camp of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. The 12 Zodiac Guardian God Warriors quickly spread out in formation, forming a circle with Chi-Yu at the center. Immediately after, an enormous energy fluctuation was generated from their bodies, and the 12 phantoms in the air began to move in an irregular rhythm. The Burning Legion's charge was getting closer and closer, and Chi-Yu's eyes had completely turned silver at this time. "Satan, what you're about to see is the most powerful strength of the Eastern Guardian. I'll let you understand that hell will never invade the human world." 12 rays of light soared into the sky, and in midair, the 12 shadows completely overlapped. Then the words of the 12 earthly branches appeared separately forming a series of rune-like light shadows that quickly rotated around the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Kieran's shadow remained in the center of the formation, and circles of invisible energy aura gushed out, causing the surrounding ground to collapse. The huge energy light had increased to an incomparably powerful level in an instant. Chi Yu sat cross-legged in midair, with his hands on his knees. The energy in his body had been completely released in the form of Kieran's origin energy. Under such circumstances, his energy had reached an unprecedented level. Every time the huge energy wave moved, the energy released by the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors would become more condensed. Suddenly, the 12 energy columns instantly shot out a ray of light, condensing on Chi Yu's body. The huge energy aura immediately engulfed his body and Kieran's shadow at the same time. Then, a silver light completely engulfed the bodies of all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, turning them into a large silver light. What was the real Zodiac Guardian domain? Only when Kieran and the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors reached the 9-cloud level would they be able to display the real power of the Zodiac Guardian domain. Although Chi Yu and the Zodiac Guardian Warriors had not reached the 9-cloud level, their average strength was above the 8-cloud level, which was enough for them to display a part of the most powerful domain. Even Chi Yu did not expect such a strong energy reaction when he displayed the domain. He suddenly understood, and a faint smile appeared in his eyes. The silver light had completely engulfed their bodies in an instant. This was a silver ocean, and all the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors sat cross-legged around Chi Yu's body. Each of them had their eyes closed, as though they had lost all senses. Their bodies also turned silver at this moment, with Chi Yu's body as the center, forming the most intimate connection. Faint energy flickered, and every time it flickered, the aura on Chi Yu's body would become stronger. However, at this moment, they could no longer see the Burning Legion outside. What the hell creatures of the Burning Legion saw was another scene. The 13 humans had suddenly disappeared in a strong silver light. Satan and Lucifer frowned at the same time. They could vaguely feel that the silver light in front of them was filled with a dangerous aura. At this moment, the silver light suddenly shrank and immediately expanded to a height of 100 meters. Chi Yu's voice was heard again, but this time his voice sounded a little strange, as though it was synthesized by an electronic device. Satan, watch. I'll help you purify your subordinates. That silver light actually condensed in the air just like that. What appeared was a tall and graceful figure. That's right, it was Hai Ruyue, the Zodiac Dragon Warrior, magnified 100 times. The aura on her body was still Hai Ruyue's, and even the expression on her face and the light on her body were no different. However, the Hai Ruyue who appeared in front of Satan and Lucifer now had an aura that could be calculated in 10 times. Hai Ruyue, who had already reached the 9-cloud level, had an increase of more than 10 times. What kind of concept was that? Even Chi Yu couldn't compete with Hai Ruyue in this state. The ultimate secret of the Zodiac Guardian domain revolved around Kieran. It connected the energy aura of all 13 Zodiac Guardian Warriors together. It allowed everyone's thundercloud force to be combined through their own energy source through Kieran's guidance. Usually, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors were indeed powerful, but they were only a dozen individuals after all. However, after the energy was combined, they were no longer as simple as an individual. What kind of feeling would it be when everyone's energy was concentrated on one Zodiac Guardian Warrior? In other words, one Zodiac Guardian Warrior could unleash the power of all the people combined. In that case, this situation could only be described as terrifying. Originally, before all of them reached the 9-cloud level, the Zodiac Guardian domain couldn't unleash the secret. However, Chi Yu was different from the previous Kieran. Although he was only at the 8-cloud level, he had already surpassed any ordinary 9-cloud Kieran. Right now, he had already surpassed any ordinary 9-cloud Qilin. Coupled with the fact that he had the source of nature in his body that could fuse with all types of energy, he was able to easily complete the final mystery of the Zodiac protection domain. The gigantic Hai Ryue. Hai Ryue's body was more than 100 meters tall. Her gaze was unusually calm. At this moment, Chi-Yu's voice kept ringing in Hai Ryue's mind. She lowered her head and looked at her body. A faint smile appeared on Ryue's face. The feeling of being filled with absolute power was so wonderful. Of course, her smile would be in the near future. The smile of the Burning Legion as the Grim Reaper. A faint silver light instantly expanded. The two dragon wings on Ryue's back suddenly stretched out. Other than her strength instantly increasing to more than 10 times her peak state, she realized that none of her abilities had changed. Her strength had completely expanded to a terrifying level, especially her own energy aura. It was incomparable to anyone else's. Even when she was with Chi-Yu in the past, she didn't feel such great power. At this moment, Ryu had only used the first stage of attribute mutation. Her enchanting body was covered in silver-white armor. She watched the Burning Legion charging towards her. Ryu stood there and slowly raised her arms. Clearly visible silver light spots began to condense behind her back. Every time the huge dragon wings flapped, a gust of wind would appear. Ryue saw that her dragon power had already turned silver. However, the attributes were no different from before. A faint smile appeared on her alluring face. Dragon Wing Starburst, a skill that she used frequently in the past, had appeared. Among the battle techniques of the Zodiac Dragon Warrior, Dragon Wing Starburst was a very ordinary skill. Every spot of starlight was about 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter. However, at this moment, every spot of starlight had already expanded to the extent of 1 meter in diameter. Even Satan's expression changed when he saw this powerful aura. The massive ball of silver light formed a sea of silver light behind Ryu, blotting out the sky. Even the sacred army behind her couldn't see the enemy in front of them because of this sea of silver light. Go, Dragon Wing Starburst! Ryue's cold voice was like the call of the Grim Reaper. The silver light spots floated out, and in the blink of an eye they had already smashed towards the charging enemies like a meteor shower. Satan roared angrily. His body instantly enlarged in the air, and he raised his Demon King's domain to the limit. He also became about 100 meters tall and rushed towards Ryue. Lucifer, on the other hand, released his own energy aura. He held the Demon King's sword that Satan had just thrown to him and blocked the silver light spots in midair. If it had been the Dragon Wing Starburst in the past, Lucifer would have only needed to expand his domain to completely block it. However, the current Dragon Wing Starburst had undergone a fundamental change. How could it be easy to block it? The huge energy fluctuations continued to rise. When Lucifer's Demon King's sword cleaved through a ball of starlight, his expression had already changed drastically. Of course, a ball of starlight couldn't cause him any harm. However, it was that ball of starlight that caused his body to remain in midair for a full second. 1 second was enough for the Dragon Wing Starburst to display its might. The rumble caused the ground to tremble once again. This time, the tremors spread throughout the entire Germany. The enemies that had rushed towards Ryue were almost wiped out in an instant. At least 100,000 soldiers of the Burning Legion had been completely annihilated by her attack. It was just a single attack, but it had achieved half of the battle results that the Sky Zodiac Legion had worked so hard to achieve. How terrifying was this level of strength! This was also the true power of the Zodiac Guardian Domain. Satan had already rushed in front of Ryue. His body swelled up. He waved his huge right fist, which erupted with a dazzling dark red light, and directly bombarded Ryue's body. A contemptuous smile appeared on Ryue's face. She didn't feel any threat from Satan at all. A faint light flickered on her body. She also stretched out her right palm. The silver dragon power expanded, and the dark red light emitted by Satan became so insignificant in front of Ryue that it directly shattered. Meanwhile, Ryue's right palm had already grabbed Satan's right fist. Satan suddenly felt a sense of panic as he looked at Ryue up close. That was because he had already discovered the secret of Ryue's power. She had combined the power of 13 people. Moreover, one of them was even more powerful than him. What kind of power was that? Ryue quickly gave him the answer. She waved her dragon palm, and the huge dragon power instantly expanded. Satan's equally huge body was directly lifted up by her. Then, Ryue suddenly waved her slender arm, and Satan's body was directly thrown out like a sack. Ryue was extremely experienced in actual combat. Of course, she wouldn't let Satan have it easy. Therefore, when Satan's body was thrown out, he was not thrown into the sky. If he was thrown into the sky, then when he fell to the ground, he would at most smash a few people to death. However, if he was thrown horizontally, he would directly sweep the ground towards the burning legion. That would be a completely different result. Satan's huge body suddenly flew horizontally along the ground, like a bowling ball. Countless of his subordinates were crushed into minced meat. His huge 12 wings on the ground were like 12 Grim Reaper scythes. Wherever they passed, countless subordinates were cut to death by his wings. The huge energy fluctuations continued to rise, rushing out for nearly a kilometer, crushing tens of thousands of hell creatures of the burning legion to death. Only then did Satan stop moving forward. The energy within his body was also greatly damaged, and even the Demon King's domain was almost shattered. Shock, absolute shock. He never expected the opponent in front of him to be so powerful. Ryue didn't pay attention to Satan. The dragon wings chasing stars appeared behind her again. This time, her energy had increased to an even more powerful level. Lucifer stared at the huge Ryue, dumbfounded. He didn't even have the courage to rush forward. In a flash, he arrived at Satan's side and lifted Satan's huge body from the ground. "Your Majesty, how did this human become so powerful?" This is too terrifying," Lucifer said in a low voice. Satan's eyes flickered with a cold light. "This is their combined energy. Naturally, it's very powerful. This should be a special cultivation technique. However, I believe that even they can't maintain this state for too long. Once the time is up, they will naturally be released from their current state. When that time comes, they will definitely become very weak. Now, we can only use the lives of our subordinates to make up for it. Order all the Burning Legion soldiers to disperse and attack. Try to reduce the destruction on the surface as much as possible." As soon as Satan gave his order, the second dragon wings chasing stars appeared. This time, even more Burning Legion soldiers were destroyed. Currently less than 2. 6 million of the 3 million Burning Legion soldiers were left. These losses were caused by Chi-Yu and his Zodiac warriors. Chi-Yu's voice rang out in the sky above the Sacred Legion. "What are you waiting for? This is your best chance." Upon hearing Chi-Yu's voice, the members of the 12 Zodiac warriors were the first to react. Snow Girl, Christy, Shangbing, and Plant Soul floated up at the same time and landed on the back of a golden-winged eagle, leading the 120 members of the 12 Zodiac warriors as they charged forward. Malti raised his scepter high, and layers of milky white light were released. He shouted, "For the glory of the Lord, Sacred Army, for the victory of the Holy War, fight!" The milky white light instantly spread to every member of the Sacred Army. Their bodies were covered in a layer of dazzling radiance. The attack began. The sacred energy increased their speed to a speed faster than a galloping horse. The 10,000 of them charged forward at the same time. At this moment, the Burning Legion had scattered due to Ryue's powerful destructive ability. They met the charge of the 12 Zodiac warriors and the Sacred Legion. In an instant, a chaotic battle broke out. Ryue didn't use any powerful skills. Instead, she activated her dragon wings and unleashed dragon wings chasing stars. This wide-area attack dealt the greatest damage to the enemies. although the Burning Legion scattered rapidly every time the dragon wings chasing stars attacked. Tens of thousands of Burning Legion soldiers would die. Ryue's ice-cold gaze focused on Satan's face. Satan and Lucifer didn't move. Under Ryue's aura, they knew that as long as they moved an inch, they would face a destructive attack. Although Ryue might not be able to kill them, they would definitely be severely injured. In fact, Satan's judgment was right. Even though the Zodiac guardian domain was powerful, its energy consumption was also very fast. Because of this, Chiyu told Ryue to save as much energy as possible and kill as many enemies as possible. As for Satan and Lucifer, Ryue might be able to kill them now. However, if she did, Ryue's energy would be at its lowest point. By then, everyone would have lost too much energy, and they would no longer have the ability to stop the Burning Legion's advance. Furthermore, with Satan and Lucifer's cunning, wouldn't they run if they couldn't defeat them? Although Ryue's energy had increased by 10 times, her body had also increased by 10 times. This made her body a lot more cumbersome than before, and her speed didn't increase by 10 times. This made it impossible for her to give up the battlefield to chase after Satan and the others. Satan and Lucifer looked at each other. Although they didn't dare to attack Ryue, when Ryue released her dragon wings, they also released their own energy at the same time to reduce the damage that Ryue could cause as much as possible. Just as the battle entered a stalemate and the Burning Legion suffered heavy casualties, a gray aura quietly appeared behind Chiyu's side. Large patches of gray aura were like a hazy fog, quietly approaching the back of the Sacred Legion. Ryue's body suddenly froze, and she slowly turned around. When she saw the large patch of gray aura, her pupils couldn't help but narrow. Through the Zodiac guardian domain, Chiyu's spiritual power replaced Ryue in controlling this huge body. When his spiritual power locked onto the gray aura, he immediately understood what was coming. Chapter 331. Satan's cold voice was heard. You didn't expect this, did you? Chiyu, all of you should be proud of yourselves. In order to deal with you, I've even called Hades over. To all of you, this can be considered a glory. Chiyu had not expected that Hell and the Netherworld would join forces. However, since the enemy had already appeared, there was no other choice. They had to fight. Everything would end in battle. A colorless light shone from Ryue's chest. Following that, a strange change occurred. A 5-colored light slowly gathered on her body. The Comtong seal was magnified by 10 times and appeared on Ryue's chest. Her huge body floated in the silence. In the blink of an eye, she was already in midair. The silver armor on her body instantly bloomed, and she directly entered the second stage of the Zodiac Dragon Warrior origin mutation. A terrifying energy aura constantly filled Ryue's body. Chiyu's voice came from Ryue's mouth. It sounded a little creepy. Satan, since you've called the people from the Netherworld over, let's perish together. Her figure flashed. Under Chiyu's control, Ryue's huge body no longer cared about the Burning Legion below. Instead, she floated directly in the direction of Hell City. Although her speed was not very fast, she was definitely not comparable to the ordinary powerhouses of the Burning Legion. He watched as Ryue suddenly flew in the direction of Hell City. Satan could not help but be stunned. He really did not understand why Chiyu had given up on this battlefield. He did not even want to help his companions go to Hell City. The gray airflow quickly approached the edge of the battlefield. The graceful figure of Hades appeared in midair. He was not aware of the situation here. He had just arrived in Berlin not long ago. After Satan had contacted him that day, the two of them had a discussion. In order not to let Yamu discover that the powerhouses of the Netherworld had disappeared prematurely until a day ago, only then did Hades leave the United States quietly with his Netherworld generals. His plan with Satan was very simple. Satan would attack from the front. On the other hand, he relied on the Netherworld aura of the Netherworld to neutralize the combat power of the European Union coalition forces. With Hades' strength, he didn't even need to kill them. Wherever the Netherworld aura went, the million-strong allied army would be completely infected by the Netherworld aura and lose their original consciousness. In a short period of time, they all became idiots. Although this ability could not be maintained for too long, it was enough for the underworld and hell to join forces to destroy Chi-Yu and the others. Hades looked at Satan from the sky. "Your Majesty, Satan, how's the situation on your side?" Satan coldly snorted. "Can't you see? Hades, make your move. That person is already flying in the direction of Hell City." Hades first took a look at the battlefield, which was filled with vicissitudes. He then followed the direction of Satan's finger and looked towards Ryue's body. He could clearly sense how powerful the aura emanating from Ryue's body was. His expression changed slightly as he gestured to the Netherworld generals behind him and said, "Follow me." Be it Hades or Satan, they didn't care about the people from the Sacred Army. They all knew that as long as they destroyed Chi-Yu and the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors, then there would be no power that could stop them from advancing. Satan, Lucifer, and Langaire followed Hades and his Netherworld generals and flew up together. Close to 100 experts surrounded Ryue and quickly chased after her. Ryue's energy was constantly increasing. Previously, she had been using the dragon wings chasing the stars. Most of her energy had been reserved. The number of enemies was so large that Chi-Yu knew that it was impossible to destroy all of them at this time. Therefore, what he could do was to inflict as much damage as possible on the enemy. Then he would leave the battlefield and look for opportunities. As for the European Union coalition forces, he couldn't be bothered about them anymore. Hell City was already very close. After all, the Burning Legion had close to 3 million soldiers. At this moment, there were still many Burning Legion soldiers jumping out of Hell City. Among them, there were many Dark Liches and Dark Warriors who originally belonged to the Dark Parliament. Chi-Yu returned control of his body to Ryue and gave Ryue a few instructions. The silver light on Ryue's body became stronger and stronger. When she flew in front of Hell City, she suddenly turned around. The light in her eyes dimmed slightly, and the dragon thundercloud force in her body started to circulate wildly, causing the energy around her body to distort with silver lightning. Satan, Hades, and the rest of the evil experts quickly caught up. Seeing that Ryue was floating there without moving, they immediately surrounded her. Hades and Satan frowned at the same time. The energy aura on Ryue's body gave them a very strange feeling. It was a special energy that couldn't be described with words. On the surface, the distorted energy around Ryue's body formed the best barrier, making it impossible for them to use their mental power to detect her real situation. However, with the strength of Satan and Hades, they could clearly feel that Ryue was using her own energy to do something. "You're all here? Then, let's just destroy them together." A gentle smile appeared on Ryue's cold face. The T-Rex's smile would only appear in front of Chi-Yu. When it appeared in front of others, it proved that her heart was filled with murderous intent. This was the conclusion of the Zodiac warriors. Of course, it was impossible for Satan and Hades to know. The distorted energy waves became stronger and stronger. Ryue's body expanded again, from her previous height of 100 meters to 150 meters. Huge dragon scales covered her alluring body, full of explosive energy. The thickness of the armor on her body increased rapidly. Even granite would feel extremely weak in front of such armor. A huge energy aura constantly filled Ryue's body, and a silver dragon head appeared on each of her shoulders. The dragon wings on her back also became larger. It actually completely protected her 150 meters tall body from behind. This kind of energy fluctuation looked very powerful. At the same time, her entire body was covered in a layer of light blue light. That's right. This was the third stage of the Zodiac Dragon Warrior's transformation into human form. It was also the ultimate transformation of human form. Facing such a powerful Ryue, Satan, Hades, and their subordinates hurriedly increased their energy levels. But none of them dared to make the first move. Even Satan and Hades didn't dare. The two experts from the plane of evil looked at each other, and they could see in each other's eyes. They could see a strong sense of unease in each other's eyes. They nodded at each other, and the energy that belonged to hell and the underworld condensed behind them. With the help of their subordinates, they instantly formed two huge energy waves, one black and one gray. The smile on Ryue's face became even clearer. "Thank you for coming to accompany me in death. Now you can all go to hell. Dragon God's domain." Crack! Two dragon claws covered in dense scales and over 5 meters, long sharp claws, rose at the same time. In the next moment, they separated in front of Ryue's chest. At the same time, the intense, distorted light also separated. No one could describe the feeling at that moment, except for Satan and Hades. Everyone else felt that time had frozen at the same time. Everything around them seemed to have stopped, and even the entire battlefield seemed to have stopped. Then, a black crack appeared between Ryu's separated hands. As his hands continued to separate, a black crack appeared. As her hands continued to separate, the black crack became bigger and bigger, and an extremely strong suction force suddenly spread out from the huge crack. "Hurry up and leave!" Satan made a prompt decision and shouted loudly. The 12 wings on his back extended to an unprecedented extent. He grabbed Lucifer with one hand and Linger with the other. The 12 wings flapped at the same time. He had completely given up on attacking. Before the crack completely opened, he brought his daughter and his most capable subordinates to escape as fast as he could. At this moment, he couldn't care about anything else. This was because he could clearly feel the powerful energy from the black crack that could completely destroy him. Hades' actions weren't any slower than Satan's. The energy that he was preparing to attack was instantly transferred to the soles of his feet. Because he was forcibly transferring energy, he couldn't help but groan. He opened his mouth and spat out a gray fog. A gray energy floated out and wrapped around the waists of the underworld generals. In the next moment, the energy that he had transferred to the soles of his feet was suddenly released like a rocket, propelling his body into the distance. If the divine dragon domain was only used to deal with Satan and Hades, it definitely wasn't enough. Although the black hole was powerful, it wasn't enough to cause real damage to the great demon king of hell and the netherworld king. However, this referred to the situation when Ryue was in his best condition, not when Ryue had merged with the Zodiac guardian god domain. When any attack reached a certain upper limit, its power would become extremely terrifying. This was the same for Chiyu. Simply put, a wind blade that focused on attack would be completely different when it appeared in the hands of Shangbing and when it appeared in the hands of Chiyu. However, the same divine dragon domain in front of him, with the help of the Zodiac guardian god domain, would definitely be different. At the very least, even Chiyu wouldn't dare to go head-on against such a powerful domain. This kind of indiscriminate attack wouldn't weaken based on the number of enemies. The suction force that every enemy had to endure was exactly the same. The crack became bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, a huge hole with a diameter of more than 100 meters appeared in front of Ryue. At this moment, it was no longer a suction force, but a direct devouring. Like a whale sucking in water, the soldiers of the Burning Legion near Hell City flew towards the black hole at a speed that was hard to discern with the naked eye. Ryue stood beside the black hole and didn't move at all. It was as if the black hole that she had torn open had nothing to do with her. If the dragon wings chasing the stars could be said to have cleared a very small empty space in the Burning Legion's army, then the moment the divine dragon domain appeared, it immediately turned the area in front of Hell City into an empty space. At least hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Burning Legion were sucked into the black hole in an instant. Furthermore, the devouring energy was still expanding and didn't show any signs of weakening. Satan and Hades ran very fast, but they were inevitably affected. In just an instant, more than 1/3 of Satan's energy was devoured. If he hadn't protected Lung Air with all his might, Lung Air would have been devoured by the huge energy. As for Lucifer, his situation was much worse. He had already consumed 4/5 of his energy. It was only with the support of Satan's mana that he wasn't destroyed. Hades' situation was much worse than Satan's. Even though he was able to fly much faster than Satan after using his energy to forcefully change the direction of his flight, he was still carrying a total of 79 underworld generals. Thus, he was still affected to a certain extent. The last 20 netherworld generals were directly swallowed up by the black hole's energy. There wasn't any sense of suction force. Instead, wherever the formless energy reached, the 20 netherworld generals' bodies vanished into thin air, just like the burning legion's army below. The energy of the black hole continued to increase, but Ryue's energy aura had completely disappeared. A large number of soldiers of the burning legion seemed insignificant in the face of that massive suction force. Even the Sacred Legion and the 12 Zodiac teams could feel the pressure they were facing diminishing. No matter how strong the Burning Legion was, they couldn't help but feel fear in the face of the black hole's devouring. In an instant, all the soldiers of the Burning Legion unleashed their maximum speed and fled into the distance. Just the trampling alone was enough to trample many of their comrades to death on this battlefield. Hades used all his might to throw the remaining underworld generals out of the black hole's range. As he had overused his own energy, he couldn't help but spit out another gray gas. He roared at Satan angrily. "Satan, is this what you call a powerful being? This isn't something that can be expressed by strength. Do you want us to perish here?" The fear in Satan's heart wasn't any less than Hades'. He had never imagined that Chi-Yu would be able to produce such a terrifying power after fusing with his 12 comrades. Just as Hades had said, after fusing with the Zodiac protective domain, Chi-Yu and the rest could no longer be described as powerful. This was a power that was filled with destructive power. Satan's eyes were filled with agony as he watched a large number of soldiers of the Burning Legion disappear. Even the soil on the ground was being devoured by the black hole. It had to be known that these were his people, the elites of hell. In just a short period of time, over 300,000 soldiers had already been devoured. Furthermore, the black hole didn't show any signs of stopping. Instead, it was continuously expanding. If this went on, even 30 million soldiers would be destroyed, let alone 3 million. Satan gritted his teeth and shouted at Hades, "This is an all-out attack. As long as we can withstand this wave, they definitely won't be able to resist anymore. Hades, if you don't want your subordinates to suffer too many losses, then join forces with me. We can close that black hole together. At the very least, we can reduce a portion of its power." At this point, Hades had no choice but to agree. Of course, he knew what would happen if they lost this war. Without much hesitation, he went to Satan's side. The two of them looked at each other and simultaneously activated the remaining energy in their bodies. Suddenly, black and gray light surged in the sky. In just a short period of time, a huge demon head had already appeared behind them. The demon head was a mixture of Satan's magic power and Hades' nether energy, causing the demon head to be completely gray and black. The two of them roared angrily and threw the huge demon head out as if they were staking everything on this one throw. The faint light gradually became more intense. In the blink of an eye, the huge energy had already arrived in front of the black hole under the control of Satan and Hades. Under the control of Satan and Hades, the huge demon head suddenly burst forth. The huge energy formed a huge gray and black light shield, completely enveloping the entire black hole and doing its best to compress it. With the barrier of the demon and nether energy, the suction of the black hole immediately disappeared. Satan and Hades controlled the last of their power from afar, desperately compressing the black hole, trying to completely destroy it. Ryue was still standing at the edge of the black hole. She didn't even move, looking at Hades and Satan with a disdainful expression on her face. It was as if all of this had nothing to do with her. The faint light flickered, and in just an instant, the black hole suddenly exploded. Although Satan and Hades were very strong, Ryu, who had been strengthened by 10 times, had even surpassed them in terms of overall strength. Moreover, Hades and Satan had already been injured by the devouring aura released by the black hole. The nether energy and magic power shattered at the same time, and Hades and Satan screamed at the same time. Satan spat out a mouthful of dark red blood, while Hades spat out a gray stream of air. The two of them froze at the same time. Then they directly fell down. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Ryua's mouth, and she said in a voice that only she could hear, "Chiyu's judgment is really right. Hades and Satan really tried to stop my dragon god domain, but how did they know? Such a powerful domain is no longer something that I can control. It seems that I should thank them instead." It turned out that after Ryua's strength had increased by 10 times, the dragon god domain released was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. It must be known that something like a black hole could even devour light. Although such a huge black hole was torn by Ryua, it was not something she could control, either. The black hole would gradually expand, and if it was allowed to expand to a certain extent, even the earth might be devoured. Before Chiyu let her use the dragon god domain, he had already told her about this situation. He had already determined that after the domain erupted, Satan and Hades would definitely come to stop it. With their energy interference, the black hole could also be controlled by Ryua again, and there was no need to worry anymore. The huge energy waves instantly increased, and the black hole, which had been compressed to only half its original size, was directly grabbed by Ryua. The torn space emitted a distorted light in the air, and she actually threw it out, drawing a strange arc in the air, sweeping past the top of Hell City and disappearing. With a flash, Ryua had already returned to the battlefield, and the direction she was pouncing in was where Satan and Hades were. At this moment, the two powerhouses of Hell and the Netherworld were at their weakest, and it was naturally the best time to destroy them. Stop! Pink and black lights lit up at the same time, blocking in front of Ryua. The ones who suddenly appeared were Lungair and Lucifer, who had been saved by Satan. Lucifer's energy was already very weak, much weaker than Lungair's. The devil's kiss appeared in Lungair's hand, and her eyes were filled with fear as she looked at Ryua, but she still blocked Ryua's path without any hesitation. "Are you trying to stop me, Princess of Hell?" "Miss Hell Princess." Ryua looked at Lungair and said coldly. Lungair's pupils contracted. Ryua's valiance had left a deep impression on them. After releasing such a powerful black hole, she could still attack. If she was allowed to attack her father, then everything in hell would be over. "Yes, I want to stop you. Unless you kill me first. Don't even think about attacking my father," Lungair said firmly as she looked at Ryua. Ryua's gaze focused, and she said calmly, "I heard from Chiyu that you saved him before. All right, I'll give you face today and not kill Satan and Hades. However, I don't wish for this war to continue. Otherwise, even if I use up all my energy, there won't be many of your burning legion left." Lungair hesitated for a moment. At this moment, the surviving underworld generals had already surrounded them. However, their previous encounter had caused them to lose the courage to attack Ryua. All of them looked at Ryua's huge body, speechless. Unknowingly, Lungair had already become the leader of the allied army. "All right, I promise you that I will retreat immediately. I will not attack for at least 3 days. However, you have to promise me that. No more attacks from my father or Hades in 3 days. How about it?" Lungair was very worried. With Ryua's current strength, as long as she recovered her energy, she could definitely kill her way into Hell City and take Satan and Hades' lives. Although the Burning Hell Legion had a large number of people, not a single one of them could really stop her. Even if they joined forces, they might not be able to slow down her advance. Ruyue hesitated for a moment before saying, "All right then. However, you have to remember that from now on, Chi-Yu doesn't owe you anything. The next time the war starts, it will be the time for us to fight to the death. All right, you can announce the retreat now." Langere nodded, and a mournful and distant voice came from her mouth. The Burning Legion, whose morale was already low, immediately stopped moving. Like a receding tide, they retreated in the direction of Hell City. A faint light flickered, and everyone's aura changed visibly. Regardless of whether it was the Sacred Legion or the Burning Legion, they all revealed a sense of relief. After all, the battle was cruel. In front of the top-notch experts in the sky, the soldiers from both sides felt very insignificant. The battle wasn't scary. What was scary was being directly destroyed without any resistance. No one wanted to become cannon fodder. Ryu didn't even look at Satan and Hades, who had fallen to the ground. The dragon wings on her back flapped. The dragon wings on her back flapped as she flew in the direction of the burning Hell Legion. With the support of the underworld general and Lucifer, Hades and Satan returned to the sky. Hades and Satan returned to the sky. They looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with astonishment. At this moment, they were no longer as confident as they had been when they had first arrived in the human world. "Hades, how much energy do you think she has left to continue fighting us?" Satan asked Hades telepathically. Although their bodies were already very weak, they weren't completely powerless to fight. Hades' body trembled. "I don't know. However, if she really attacks with all her might, even if we can destroy her, I'm afraid that you and I will disappear from this place forever. So, I agree with Miss Langere's suggestion. Let's call a truce for now. We have to find a better way or find their flaws in order to obtain the final victory. Her power is simply too terrifying. It's definitely not a power that should appear in the human world." Satan glanced at Langere. In fact, he also knew that if they continued fighting, it was very likely that he and Hades would be destroyed here. However, he didn't want Hades to blame Langere for announcing a retreat without permission. Now that Hades had also admitted that Langere's decision was correct, there was nothing for him to worry about. Very soon, Ryue returned to her side. Although the Burning Legion was retreating quickly, the powerhouses of the underworld and hell were still floating in the air, monitoring them. Silver light shone from Ryue's body once again. The light gradually changed. Suddenly, 2 huge goat horns emerged from her head. Wrapped in silver light, her entire body rapidly changed. In the blink of an eye, she had already turned into another powerhouse wearing a huge white robe. He had a handsome face, huge goat horns, and a long robe. An arrogant voice came out of his mouth. "Sister Ryue is really amazing. If I don't beat them until their faces are blooming, how would they know why the flowers are so red? So this is how I become after reaching the 9 clouds. The feeling of having power is really not bad." As he spoke, milky white circles of light were continuously released from his body, completely enveloping the Sacred Legion and the 12 Zodiac teams below. The Sacred Legion had expended a lot of energy. Although they were facing the scattered Burning Legion, the Burning Legion's crazy fighting strength had left an incomparably deep impression on them. At least 2,000 of the Sacred Legion's low-level powerhouses had been killed in the battle just now. The remaining people were mostly injured. As the milky white light spread in the sky, the warriors of the Sacred Legion and the 12 Zodiac teams suddenly discovered that their injuries had actually healed on their own. Not a single scar was left behind. The most miraculous thing was that even those who had severed limbs were enveloped by the milky white light. Their severed limbs were regenerated. This miraculous skill caused everyone to gasp in amazement. The Sacred Legion and the 12 Zodiac teams had already expended a lot of energy, but under the milky white light, they practically instantly recovered their original fighting strength. Satan and Hades watched this scene from afar. Hades sighed and said, "It seems that we no longer need to doubt their strength. Your Majesty Satan, we need to reconsider. I really didn't expect that there would be such powerhouses in the human world. I'm afraid that our future battles will not be optimistic." Just as Hades was speaking to Satan, an incomparably loud roar suddenly came from behind them. The two of them immediately turned around and were stunned by the scene in front of them. More than half of the Burning Legion soldiers had already retreated back to Hell City. At this moment, a huge change suddenly occurred in Hell City. Hell City, which had been expanding under the influence of Satan's magic, suddenly split open. It was originally several hundred meters away from the ground, so when it suddenly split open, it immediately let out a huge roar and fell to the ground in the blink of an eye. Such a huge city that could accommodate an army of 3 million had been completely destroyed just like that. This scene left an extremely deep impression on everyone present. The surging roars were accompanied by violent screams. Everyone could hear the screams clearly. There were at least hundreds of thousands of people screaming at the same time. It was actually so vast and majestic. Everyone on both sides fell into a daze. The sudden destruction of Hell City immediately caused everyone to fall into a state of extreme shock. Satan only felt his vision go black, and he immediately fainted. Even he, the demon king of hell, found it a little hard to endure the successive blows. Lucifer's eyes were filled with shock as he supported Satan's body. At this moment, he had already lost his composure. Hades, the Nether King, sat there with lifeless eyes, his entire body emitting an extremely unstable aura. Only one word could be seen in his eyes at this moment: fear. At this moment, among the higher-ups of hell and the underworld, the only one who could still maintain her calm was Lang. Although she also had a shocked expression on her face, she was the only one who could still react at this moment. Chapter 332. Your Highness. The Dark Chancellor and the Dark Warrior Emperor hurried forward. Ever since the death of the 3 Dreadlords, their strength had been greatly reduced. In the previous battle, they had not been of much use. Lang-Er's eyes flashed. "Pass down my orders. The remaining members of the Burning Legion are to set up camp outside Nether City, where is the general of the Black General Tribe." A 4-winged general floated over to Lang-Er sighed and bowed. "You, bring your men to the ruins immediately. Do your best to bring out those who are still alive. If they are seriously injured and cannot be healed, you may do as you see fit." "Yes, Your Highness." Lang-Er issued one order after another. As she gradually calmed down from her shock, her orders became smoother and smoother. By the time she was done, her entire body felt like it was about to collapse. Lang-Er knew very well that if it wasn't for the fact that they had only faced 10,000 enemies, they would have been finished if they had launched a counterattack. Turning around, Lang-Er looked in the direction of Chi-Yu's huge body. Perhaps sensing her gaze, Yan Xiaoyi's appearance gradually faded in the silver light. The faint silver light transformed into a layer of light armor, and Yan Xiaoyi's upright figure appeared in front of everyone. His gaze pierced through the sky. His eyes met Lang-Er's, and the two's gazes froze. Chi-Yu could not see any hatred in Lang-Er's eyes, only a trace of grief. The Burning Legion slowly retreated to the ruins of Nether City. Relying on the terrain, they temporarily set up camp. For these dark creatures, as long as they had the constant replenishment of dark energy, they would not lose their ability to fight. Under the 9-star alignment phenomenon, it was obviously the most suitable place for them to fight. The warriors of the Black General Tribe quickly entered the ruins, rescuing large numbers of Burning Legion soldiers from the ruins. However, the destruction of Nether City had brought about too many losses. In fact, the losses were even greater than when Ryue had released the black hole. Chi-Yu waved his hand and floated up, retreating from the battlefield as well. The Sacred Legion was like a triumphant hero, quietly retreating behind Chi-Yu. The silver light scattered, and the 13 figures reappeared. It was still the same as when the domain was formed. Chi-Yu was in the center, and the others were around him. At this time, whether it was Chi-Yu or the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors, their faces turned extremely pale. They weren't hurt, but at this moment, the energy in his body had already dried up. That's right, it was drying up. Because the Zodiac guardian god warriors had not reached the 9-cloud level, the Zodiac guardian domain was not the most perfect combination. Under the effect of the domain, although everyone could fuse their energy together, the powerful Ryue and Yan Xiaoyi also had to consume a huge amount of energy. If it wasn't for the fact that Chi-Yu had a huge advantage in terms of energy, surpassing any ordinary 9-cloud Kirin, they would have perished long ago. A faint light flickered. Taking a deep breath, he signaled everyone to sit down. Now that the Hell Camp was in chaos, he didn't believe that the Burning Legion would launch an attack in a short period of time, so everyone could immediately enter a state of cultivation. Under the leadership of Snow Girl and Shangbing, the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors quickly surrounded Chi-Yu and the others. The 120 golden-winged eagles and the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors released an order to maintain a state of full alert. Even Pope Marty was not allowed to get close. Today's battle could be considered a decisive battle between the humans and the evil dimension's powerhouses. The final outcome had been decided, and the humans had won. However, how many people knew the dangers that the humans faced in today's battle? It could be said that the key to today's decisive battle was the Zodiac guardian domain of Chi-Yu and the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors. However, when the domain was fully unleashed and Ryue was 10 times stronger, the rapid consumption of energy almost drained Chi-Yu dry. He definitely couldn't expend too much energy on his companions. So for a long period of time, Chi-Yu was the only one who was holding on. The faint green light seemed so thin that it could barely allow Chi-Yu and the 12 Zodiac guardian god warriors to communicate. However, to them, the origin of nature's energy might be weak, but it was very useful. As long as there was energy from the origin of nature, they would be able to recover to their peak condition in a short period of time. Chi-Yu was definitely the core of the Zodiac guardian god realm. However, after unleashing this domain, Chi-Yu could only be the core and could not participate in the battle. After all, Kirin was too powerful among the Zodiac guardian gods. If Kirin was 10 times stronger, he would probably collapse in less than 3 seconds. Therefore, Chi-Yu chose Ryue, who was the strongest among the Zodiac guardian god warriors, and let Ryue control the dragon warrior that was 10 times stronger to deal with the enemies. Choosing to release the black hole in front of Hell City was what Chi-Yu asked Ryue to do. Releasing the black hole to devour a large number of enemies was only one of the purposes. More importantly, it was the moment when Ryue threw the weakened black hole out. Although the black hole was forcefully sealed, during the process of sliding before it was sealed, it caused a temporary dislocation in space. The dislocation of space was sharper than any sharp blade, and it instantly broke through Satan's energy protection over Hell City. The black hole disappeared, and when everything was over, the energy in Hell City could no longer support the enormous size of Hell City, and it shattered. In a war, it was equivalent to heavily injuring the opponent from both the battle and the destruction of Hell City. Although it couldn't be said that the foundation of the Hell's Underworld Coalition army had been damaged, the battle today had completely changed the situation that should have been one-sided on the battlefield. Satan's Burning Legion had less than 2 million soldiers left who could fight. Satan and Hades were both seriously injured at the same time. Hades had also lost a third of the Dark Earth generals under him. This greatly weakened their strength. This battle would continue. As long as he had the Zodiac guardian domain, a powerful force that his opponent could not resist, Chi-Yu was confident that the final victory would belong to his side. The training continued, and soon the Holy See had already sent the news to the Zodiac army. The European Union army had been lost due to the influence of the nether energy. Under the effect of the holy aura of the church, he was gradually recovering. Now he just had to wait for Chi-Yu to wake up. Then he would decide whether to launch a counterattack against the Burning Legion. The cultivation of Chi-Yu and the Zodiac warriors lasted for 3 whole days, ever since he reached the 8-cloud realm. This was the longest recovery time that Chi-Yu had ever taken. It could be seen that the Zodiac guardian domain consumed a lot of energy. At the end of the training, Yan Xiaoyi's attack was just to intimidate his opponent. In fact, the Zodiac guardian domain was already an arrow at the end of its flight. If it wasn't for the destruction of Hell City, as long as the Burning Legion launched another powerful attack, the situation of the battle would immediately change. That was why the battle could turn out like this. Luck was also on Chi-Yu's side. As the auspicious Kirin, he had enjoyed such treatment more than once. Slowly opening his eyes, Chi-Yu waved his hands, and a multicolored light appeared. Amidst a 5-colored light, the 12 Zodiac warriors were simultaneously absorbed into the Kongtong Seal's 5 elements domain. Now that his energy had recovered, everyone's energy had also recovered by more than half with his help. An intense battle. This was the case with the Zodiac warriors. Chi-Yu believed that as long as everyone was given time, these Zodiac warriors would become true 9-cloud realm powerhouses in no time. At that time, even if they had to face the Burning Legion and all the powerhouses from the underworld, he wouldn't have to worry. Therefore, he didn't even communicate with the Zodiac warriors and immediately let them enter the 5 elements domain to continue their cultivation. After all, the earlier they improved, the more advantageous it would be for the entire battlefield. Seeing that Chi-Yu had woken up, Snow Girl immediately floated to his side and asked with concern, "Chi-Yu, you're awake. How are you?" Chi smiled and said, "Don't worry, everyone and I are fine. We were just a little exhausted. Did the Burning Legion do anything these few days?" Snow Girl shook her head and said, "They're only stationed in front of the ruins of Hell City. According to our observations, the Burning Legion's remaining combat power is about 1,900,000. In other words, the destruction of Hell City took away at least a few 100,000 of their combat power. Big Sister Ryua is really too strong. I really envy the Zodiac warriors. If only I could fight by your side." Chi-Yu floated up and affectionately pinched Snow Girl's delicate nose. He said, "Haven't you always been fighting alongside me? It seems that Satan and Hades' injuries are not light. Moreover, the previous battle had a huge impact on them. We don't need to be anxious. They should be the ones who are anxious. If they want to continue, I'm happy to accompany them. When everyone reaches the 9-cloud realm, who knows who will take the initiative to destroy the other?" Snow Girl's eyes suddenly flashed. She said, "Oh right, Marty has come to look for you many times. The European Union's allied forces have already returned to normal. Now that the Burning Legion is not protected by Hell City, they asked you if you want to launch an attack on the Burning Legion? That way, they might be able to launch an immediate counterattack." Chi-Yu shook his head and said, "No, not yet. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Launching an all-out attack on the Burning Legion now will only force them to do something desperate. The Burning Legion still has close to 2 million combat power. Frankly speaking, if they directly launch an all-out attack, we won't be able to stop them. There are still many experts in the Burning Legion. It's very difficult for the weapons on Earth to cause real damage to them. In my opinion, even those silver weapons are the same. Snow Girl, invite Marty over. I have something to say to him." Snow Girl hesitated for a moment and suddenly said sadly, "She's here." Chi-Yu was startled. Who did you say came?" Snow Girl raised her head. When she looked at Chi-Yu again, her eyes were filled with tears. "The people from Greece. They're all here. They came yesterday. They suddenly lost their opponent, Hades. It wasn't until the end of the battle that they found out that Hades had come here. Only then did they know that they were tricked by Hades, so they rushed over." Looking at the hazy tears in Snow Girl's eyes, Chi-Yu naturally knew what she was thinking. He opened his arms and embraced Snow Girl. He said softly, "Don't be sad. I will definitely take revenge for father-in-law. Although it's not now, don't worry. I will definitely not cooperate with Yamu and the others. When this war is over, I will definitely have an explanation for what happened that time. No matter what happens in the future, I will never forget what happened back then. Snow Girl nodded gently in Chiyu's arms. With Chiyu's promise, she was relieved. She knew very well how beautiful Yamu was. Frankly speaking, in her heart, she was really afraid that Chiyu would give up his original hatred because of Yamu's beauty. Father's death could be said to be caused by Yamu. Chiyu, there's one more thing. If possible, let me personally kill the chairman of the Dark Parliament. Back then, they were the ones who captured Father and brought him to the Dark Parliament. They also caused the death of my family. They are also my enemies. Listening to Snow Girl's words, Chiyu couldn't help but pat his head. He smiled bitterly and said, "Look at me, I really neglected these things. Yes, there is also the chairman of the Dark Parliament. They were the ones who caused the death of your family. Snow, don't worry. It won't be long before I will definitely help you fulfill your wish and let you kill him with your own hands. Go tell Marty to come here and tell him that I don't want to see the people from Greece." Snow Girl stood up from Chiyu's arms and took the initiative to kiss his cheek. The surrounding members of the Zodiac squad hurriedly turned away, as if they hadn't seen anything. Snow Girl's pretty face blushed, and only then did she leave. It didn't take long for Marty to arrive in front of Chiyu under the lead of the Snow Lady. The current battlefield was very simple and crude. Against such a powerful enemy like the allied forces of Hell and the Underworld, no one cared about comfort. Every member of the Sacred Army lived in the most ordinary of tents. And because Chiyu was in a hurry to heal, he didn't even use a tent. "Mr. Chi." Marty bowed respectfully to Chiyu. It was hard to tell that he was the ruler of the Vatican, the Supreme Pontiff. The respect in his eyes couldn't be faked. It was an emotion that came from the bottom of his heart. After seeing Chiyu's true might and the power of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors several times, Marty was now completely convinced. He was very clear that the reason why they could achieve such a glorious result this time was because of the miracle created by Chiyu and his companions. "Your Highness, I have just heard the current situation from Snow Girl. I also need to trouble you to tell the European Union Coalition Army not to act rashly. Without my orders, they must not attack the enemy. Although the Burning Legion has suffered heavy losses, their foundation is still there. They aren't something that can be destroyed by the weapons of Earth. What we need to do now is to waste time. I'm not afraid to tell you that my companions are constantly training. If they can train to their peak state, then we won't have to worry about the evil Plane Coalition Army in front of us." Marty said cheerfully, "Okay, I will definitely convey your message. Don't worry. No matter when it is, you will be the leader of this battle. Tell me what to do, and I will definitely cooperate. The generals and marshals of the European Union have long been scared silly by the war in front of them. If it weren't for you, the backbone, I'm afraid we would have all been destroyed by them." Chi-Yu smiled indifferently, not moved by Marty's compliment. He said, "As long as they don't drag me down when the time comes. Yamu is already here with her Zodiac Guardian, right?" When Marty heard Chi-Yu mention Yamu, he couldn't help but sneak a glance at Chi-Yu's expression. Although Chi-Yu's expression was still calm, the cold glint in his eyes couldn't be hidden from Marty. Marty's heart trembled. He knew that the hatred between Chi-Yu and Yamu would probably never be resolved. Malty's heart shivered. He knew that the hatred between Chi-Yu and Yu Mao would never be resolved. Marty's heart trembled. He knew that the hatred between Chi-Yu and Yamu would probably never be resolved. Yes, when they found out that Hades has come to our side, they immediately rushed over to help. Yamu heard that you have been training, so she didn't come to disturb you. You see, Chi-Yu waved his hand and said somewhat impatiently, "I don't want to see him. I have already told Snow Girl to tell you. In the upcoming battle, if they want to participate, let them. But I will not join forces with these Greek people. His Majesty the Pope is also very clear about what happened between us. I think you should understand what I mean." Marty hesitated for a moment. He muttered, "Mr. Chi, don't you think we should put the big picture first? The sooner we can destroy the enemy, the better it will be for us." "Enough." Chi Yu was slightly angry. "I don't need you to teach me what to do. Get out." When Chi Yu was slightly angry, his body would release a faint pressure. Marty only felt his body tense up as he was being suppressed by a huge force. At that moment, he didn't even dare to say another word and left immediately. Looking at Marty's departing figure, a cold glint flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. He turned his gaze in the direction of the ruins of Hell City. He muttered to himself, "Ling'er, I'm afraid I have to apologize. Since you've invaded our Earth, you should be prepared to be destroyed." Chi Yu's estimation of the battlefield was very accurate. 3 days ago, when Hell City was about to be destroyed, he already knew that as long as there were no special changes, the outcome of this war was irreversible. The morale of the allied forces of Hell and the underworld had been weakened, and it was unlikely that they could do anything. However, would everything really go smoothly? A special change still happened. During the battle, Chi Yu had been maintaining the Kirin armor. Now that he had finished his training, he naturally changed back into his own clothes. When he took out his phone and looked at it, he was surprised to find that there were more than 130 missed calls on his phone from yesterday until a minute ago. At the same time, there were also dozens of text messages. The text messages only said the same thing: "Please call me back immediately after you see this." An ominous premonition made Chi Yu's mind go blank. The call was from the other side of the world, the Yanhuang Republic. Even when facing Satan and Hades together, Chi Yu didn't feel a trace of fear, but now he felt a sense of fear. He understood that there was no other explanation for the Yanhuang Republic to call him so frequently. Perhaps in the east of Earth, the evil plane that he had guessed had finally appeared. If he could avoid it, of course. Chi Yu didn't want to face such a thing. The battle here had finally stabilized. If something happened to the Yanhuang Republic, as the mainstay of the country, he had no other choice but to leave immediately. However, without the support of the Zodiac army, could the Vatican and the Greek people resist the allied forces of the underworld and hell? There was no need to guess the answer. However, Chi Yu couldn't avoid it. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Then he dialed the number. The call was picked up immediately. It was obvious that someone had been waiting on the other side of the phone. "Chi Yu, is that you?" An anxious voice came through the phone. It was Jida. One had to know that Jida had always called Chi Yu master, but this time he had directly called him by his name. Chi Yu immediately understood the urgency of the matter. "Jida, it's me. Did something happen in the country?" Chi Yu asked directly. "Chi Yu, come back quickly. Something big happened in the country. Yesterday morning, a monster appeared out of nowhere. Although he was in human form, his body was extremely large. He was more than 5 times the height of an ordinary person. When he first appeared, he was in the western part of Hebei province. Now, he's heading towards capital city. He's too strong. We've tried to use all kinds of methods to deal with him, but to no avail. All kinds of weapons, except for the nuclear bomb, have been used on him. However, the results were absolutely ineffective. Now, at least tens of thousands of people have died in his hands. Now, the people from the 4 major families, they're using all their strength to stall this guy. Unfortunately, it's useless. I don't know the exact number of casualties, but the 4 major families must have suffered heavy losses this time. However, it's all thanks to them. If not for their cooperation with the Yellow Flame Soul Warriors, I'm afraid that the monster would have already reached Capital City. It's too scary. It's really too scary. I saw the video. That guy was holding a huge axe in his hand. If he swung it casually, even a mountain would be split in half." Hearing Jida's words, not only was Chi Yu not worried, he even relaxed. To an expert, an unknown enemy was the scariest, and against a familiar enemy. Even if the other party was very strong, he could at least know the other party's background. Thinking of this, Chi Yu immediately asked, "Is there really only one? Are there any other green-skinned fellows with him? Jita said no. I say, boss, just one is enough to give us a headache. If there are more, won't Yan Huang be finished? A faint smile appeared on Chi Yu's face. All right, I understand. Don't worry, I'll rush back immediately. Don't worry. Tell Uncle Ji to stall him as much as possible. Don't let him go to the densely populated cities. Wait for me to go back and settle everything. Jita agreed. Only then did he hang up. A smile accompanied by a cold expression appeared on Chi Yu's face. That's right, the enemy from the east had appeared. It was just that it was different from what he had expected, but it was the best outcome. Because there was at least a 90% chance that the enemy that appeared in the Yan Huang Republic was the ancient demonic god Chiyu. The huge humanoid body was Chiyu's real body. The axe that could easily split a mountain was naturally Panga's axe. It seemed that the 9-star alignment not only opened the passage between the underworld, hell, and the human world, but also allowed Chiyu to transmigrate. Although Chiyu had once posed a great threat to Chiyu and possessed the powerful Panga's axe, he was now nothing in Chiyu's heart. If it was just Chiyu alone, then the problem would be much easier to solve. The enemy from the east was obviously much weaker than the enemy from the west. This made Chiyu completely relieved. However, he soon realized a problem. If he were to return to his country, should he bring the Zodiac army with him? In the truest sense of the word, he should not do that. Once the Zodiac army left, the battlefield would immediately change. However, if the Zodiac army did not go with him, would they be able to defeat the underworld and hell without him, the core of the Zodiac Guardian? A complicated light flickered in his eyes. 10 minutes later, Chiyu had already made his decision. After walking out of the Zodiac squad's formation, why would Chiyu, who had recovered his strength, need anyone to protect him? Following the fluctuation of his mental strength, Chiyu went straight to Marty's tent. Your Highness the Pope, I am Chiyu. May I come in? Marty, who was in the tent, was stunned. He had just returned from Chiyu's place. He turned to look at Yamu, who was sitting beside him, with a questioning look in his eyes. Yamu smiled bitterly and nodded. After all, Marty was still lacking. With Chiyu's strength, how could he not know that she was here? Marty hurriedly stood up, walked out of the tent, and invited Chiyu in. Sure enough, after Chiyu saw Yamu, he did not look surprised at all. He stood at the entrance, as if he did not hear Marty's words, and said calmly, We are leaving. We came to say hello to you. What? Marty and Yamu exclaimed almost at the same time. Yamu even stood up from her chair. They understood what Chiyu's simple words meant to them. Chiyu said, I said, we are leaving. We have to return to the Yan Huang Republic immediately. An expert from the evil dimension has appeared in the Yan Huang Republic. Perhaps you have heard of the ancient legend of the Yan Huang Republic, the demon god Chiyu, who once fought with the ancestor of Yan Huang, Huang Emperor, has appeared in a place not far from the capital city of Yan Huang. He is invincible and no one can stop him. Therefore, I have to rush back immediately. But what should we do here? In his haste, Marty even forgot to use honorifics. Chiyu shrugged and made a helpless expression. I'm sorry, Your Highness the Pope. I have to put my, country first. I believe you can understand how I feel now. It's not that I don't want to help you continue fighting, but I have to be responsible for my country. If an enemy appeared in Greece now, I think Miss Yamu would definitely make the same choice. Yamu stared blankly at Chiyu and couldn't say a word. She didn't know why, but after seeing Chiyu previously, she realized that other than the complicated feelings she had for Chiyu, she actually felt a tinge of fear. That's right, she was a little afraid of seeing Chiyu. Even she herself did not know when this subtle change had occurred. Marty only felt that his mind was blank. The powerful scene of the Burning Legion kept flashing in his mind. If Chiyu wanted to leave, with Satan and Hades' strength, it would be impossible for them not to be discovered. At that time, even if Yamu and her constellation guardians appeared, could they still resist them? Mr. Chi, can you stay for a few more days? Or can you help us fight one last time before you leave? Marty asked, unwilling to give up. Chi Yu shook his head and said, my country is suffering a huge disaster. I have to rush back as fast as I can. All right, you don't have to say anything. If the situation on my side is resolved smoothly, I will rush back as fast as I can. If not, you can only pray for yourselves. His words were very cold, and there was no room for negotiation. Whether it was the West, the Vatican, or the Greek guardians, Chi Yu didn't have a good impression of them. When his country was threatened, he had no other choice. After saying that, Chi Yu turned around and walked out. At this moment, Yamu's voice sounded behind him. Chi Yu. Chi Yu stopped for a moment and said without turning his head, if you want me to stay, then please don't say anything. Although I promised the sun god Apollo to deal with hell and the underworld, I didn't promise to help you destroy them. Chapter 333. Chi Yu didn't say much and walked out. He didn't even think about Yamu's words to prevent himself from being troubled. Yamu's eyes were filled with sadness. She looked at Chi Yu's back as he left and sighed. What's the point of saying all this now? It seems like I still have fantasies about him. Although it wasn't what I wanted to do, since I've inherited Athena's divine power, Athena and I have become one. Isn't it the same whether she did it or I did it? At least it's the same in his eyes. If I don't die this time, Chi Yu, I'll definitely return what I owe you. Marty didn't hear Yamu's inner monologue. He watched Chi Yu leave. Although he was anxious, he didn't have the courage to stop Chi Yu. He turned around to face Yamu and said, Miss Yamu, what should we do now? Chi Yu is gone. How? How can we defend against the Burning Legion's attack? Not to mention the Underworld's army. Yamu said calmly, we'll do our best and leave the rest to fate. This is our only choice. If things don't work out, we can only choose to leave and find a safe place to wait for an opportunity to counterattack. Marty was stunned for a moment. As a sly old fox, he immediately understood the meaning behind Yamu's words. His eyes lit up. His previously unstable breath instantly calmed down, and he nodded at Yamu. Chi Yu stealthily returned to his camp without alerting anyone else. He only called the Snow Lady to his side. Snow, let's go out for a while. Holding Snow Girl's cold hand, Chi Yu's heart skipped a beat. Recently, he didn't even have the chance to be intimate with his women. In that aspect, it was really hard for him to hold it in. Unfortunately, he really didn't have the time to think about his own matters now. The Snow Lady blushed slightly. She did not ask where Chi Yu was taking her, only obediently nodding her head. The way he looked at Chi Yu also became a little strange. After Chi Yu pulled Snow Girl out of the camp, a dark red light shone from his body. Kiran's invisibility enveloped their bodies, and they immediately disappeared under the dark sky. Kiran's concealment's area of effect was very limited. If the two adults did not want to miss anything, they would have to hug each other. Hugging Snow Girl's cold and smooth body was naturally a very enjoyable thing. Snow Girl was the same as Ryua. They both liked white and blue very much. She was wearing a long, white dress today. Chi Yu was suddenly surprised to find that after he used Kiran's invisibility to envelop himself and Snow Girl's bodies, and after he hugged her, Snow Girl's aura became obviously scorching. For an expert who cultivated an ice energy, this was obviously not normal. His mental power quietly enveloped Snow Girl's body. Chi Yu didn't have to carefully feel it. He also found that Snow Girl's heart was constantly beating faster. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at him. Snow Girl, are you okay? Chi Yu asked with concern. Snow Girl grunted, but didn't say anything. She only hugged Chi Yu's hand slightly tighter. Snow Girl, why aren't you saying anything? Just as Chi Yu said this, he felt Snow Girl's body tremble slightly. She said in a low voice, What do you want me to say? You didn't spoil the atmosphere like this before. But it's not good to call me out in front of everyone. Sister Shangbing and the others will probably be jealous. That's not good. Although I also want to be with you, but let's hurry up and go back. Don't let them think too much. Chi-Yu stared dumbfoundedly at the Snow Lady as he cupped her head with both hands. At this moment, the Snow Lady's face was already flushed red and her eyes were tightly shut. From her appearance, one could tell that she was a little nervous, but also a little expectant. Her alluring appearance could not help but cause one's heart to palpitate. Looking at her, Chi-Yu couldn't help but laugh. "You little fool, what are you thinking? Am I that lascivious? I still need to make use of this time to pull you out to be intimate." "Ah." Snow Girl opened her eyes in surprise. Seeing the playful smile in Chi-Yu's eyes, she was momentarily stunned. Then why did you call me out? You're so embarrassing. You're so bad." At this time, she already understood that she had misunderstood Chi-Yu. Although she still didn't know why he called her out, it was obviously not the case. Looking at her cute look, Chi-Yu really wanted to immediately execute her on the spot. However, he knew that the longer he delayed here, the more damage Chi-Yu would cause in the Yanhuang Republic. Forcefully suppressing the desire in his heart, he flew up with Snow Girl and kissed her forehead. "I don't know anything, okay? Don't be shy." Snow Girl leaned into Chi-Yu's arms and refused to raise her head. She murmured, "You're so bad. You only pulled me out in front of everyone, and you used Kirin to make us invisible. How can I not misunderstand? You returned my innocence," Chi-Yu said indignantly. "Who knew that your little head is filled with such filthy thoughts? Even if I really wanted to do it with you, I would have asked the Pope for a tent. What if you catch a cold in this wilderness?" As he said that, he secretly pinched Snow Girl's perky, but his face full of naughtiness. Snow Girl snorted and said, "I don't care. Anyway, you're bad. Tell me, why did you bring me out?" The smile in Chi-Yu's eyes gradually disappeared. "Have you forgotten what you told me before? It's all my fault. I've been neglecting your matter. We're going to return to the Yanhuang Republic soon. Before we go back, although we can't solve the problem of the underworld and hell, at least I have to help you resolve some of the hatred. Otherwise, if he dies in the hands of the Vatican or the Greek guardians, won't you be able to take revenge with your own hands?" Snow Girl suddenly raised her head and looked at Chi-Yu. She looked at Chi-Yu in a daze. "Did you call me out to take revenge?" Chi-Yu nodded and said yes. "Why? Don't you want to take revenge now?" Looking at Chi-Yu, Snow Girl's eyes gradually turned red, crystal clear tears swirling in her eyes. Seeing her like this, Chi-Yu suddenly panicked. "Snow, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Something I did wrong. Don't cry. When you cry, my heart hurts. Ugh." Snow Girl's cold lips fiercely pressed on Chi-Yu's, four warm and moist lips tightly pressed together. Snow Girl's arms directly wrapped around Chi-Yu's neck. At this moment, she was like an aroused wild cat, constantly twisting in Chi-Yu's embrace, as if she wanted to use her own heat to melt Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu's willpower in this area wasn't too strong. While he could still resist, he managed to resist the temptation of the embrace and leave the Snow Lady's lips with great difficulty. "Silly girl, if you continue like this, I'm afraid I'll really eat you up." Snow Girl looked at Chi-Yu. Tears turned into laughter and said, "Eat. As long as you're not afraid of dying from overeating, you can eat." He couldn't help but kiss her again. At this moment, they had already arrived at their destination. Chi-Yu transmitted his voice. "After this matter is over, I'll definitely eat you up, not leaving a single dregs." Snow Girl leaned into Chi-Yu's embrace. "I've long been yours. Whenever you want to eat, you can come and find me." Chi-Yu took a deep breath. Being intimate with Snow Girl filled his heart with a gentle aura. However, this time he brought Snow Girl here for revenge. "We'll talk about everything when we get back. Later, you'll do it yourself. You don't have to worry about anything else. I'll be here." Snow Girl nodded. She also knew that this was not a good time to be intimate with Chi-Yu. A faint light flickered, and Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a trace of tyrannical light. He instantly released his mental strength. At this moment, The place where he and Snow Girl were at happened to be above the Burning Legion's encampment. With Chi Yu's control over his mental strength and soul, coupled with the effect of Kirin's concealment, even powerhouses at the level of Satan and Hades would not be able to discover their existence at this time. Mental fluctuations constantly emitted from Chi Yu's body. For others, it was undoubtedly an impossible task to find a person among millions of troops. However, with the detection of mental strength, Chi Yu still completed the search very quickly. The Dark Chairman's dark energy was not much different from other people's dark energy, and it was considered strong in the Burning Legion. However, there was a problem with his dark energy, because he did not come from hell, so the purity of his dark energy was slightly worse than the hell creatures, so it became much easier to find him among the crowd. The entire Burning Legion's encampment was very densely packed. Although Hell City was destroyed, the huge ruins of the city formed a natural barrier behind them. Chi Yu could feel that Satan and Hades seemed to be in a state of cultivation. Obviously, they had not fully recovered from the heavy injuries they suffered that day. With Snow Girl in his arms, Chi Yu quietly came to the left wing of the Burning Legion's encampment. Under the guidance of his mental strength, the first thing he saw was the tall body of the Dark Warrior Huang Emperor. The Dark Chairman was sitting beside him, and the two of them were talking about something. Chi Yu nodded to Snow Girl and quietly brought her above the Dark Chairman and the Dark Warrior Emperor. Kirin's concealment was instantly enlarged under the effect of the huge thundercloud force. The surrounding hell creatures of the Burning Legion only felt their vision darken, and they were shrouded by a dark red light. The Jade Pearl Realm technique completely enveloped thousands of dark creatures with the Dark Warrior Emperor and the Dark Chairman as the center. The endless dark red light made the hell creatures suddenly shrouded in a shocked expression. Before they could react, Chi Yu's cold figure appeared in front of them. Suddenly seeing Chi Yu, the Dark Chairman and the Dark Warrior Emperor couldn't help but change their expressions. This man in front of them had even defeated Satan. "Mr. Chi, I'm afraid that sneak attacking us like this will damage your prestige." The Dark Chairman swallowed a mouthful of saliva and looked at Chi Yu. Chi Yu said coldly, "When you captured the Emperor Heart, Snow Lotus King, did you think of damaging your own prestige? Sooner or later you will have to pay for it." A cyan light quietly appeared in front of the surrounding hell creatures. Chi Yu's simple wind blades could only be described as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The huge energy fluctuations spread to every corner of the Jade Pearl Realm technique in an instant. This time, Chi Yu didn't use Su Mi's mustard seed ability to separate the hell creatures. Instead, he instantly shrunk the space between them to the smallest degree possible. In an instant, a large number of hell creatures were squeezed together. The feeling of a vacuum made it impossible for them to breathe, let alone resist. Green wind blades that were even larger than the bodies of these hell creatures silently swept past. The bodies of these hell creatures were completely frozen in midair. Their bodies disappeared at the same time along with the green light. They were thrown out by the 1,000 changes of 4 stars technique. There was no need for the dead to stay. Killing thousands of hell creatures in an instant was a simple matter for Chi Yu. He didn't even look at them. The Dark Chancellor felt his throat go dry. In just a few blinks of an eye, in this dark red world, only he and the Dark Valiant Emperor were left. Just the feeling of fear was enough to make his body tremble subconsciously. In the face of such a strong enemy, it was difficult for him to even think of resisting. Go to hell! A huge amount of dark green energy gushed out from the back of the Dark Warrior Emperor. He waved his huge black sword and went straight towards Chi Yu. The dark energy flooded towards Chi Yu. Although he knew that he was no match for Chi Yu, he was absolutely unwilling to admit defeat under the shroud of death. Chi Yu's body didn't move. He just raised his right hand. There was no sound. As soon as the dark green energy came within 3 feet of Chi Yu, it disappeared silently. The edge of the giant black sword was currently in Chi Yu's grasp. Clutching the giant blade, the corners of Chi Yu's mouth involuntarily revealed a cruel smile. The Dark Warrior Emperor struggled desperately, but he was shocked to find that his body and the huge sword in his hand seemed to have been completely glued to Chi Yu. Even if he wanted to give up the sword in his hand now, he couldn't. Then he saw a terrifying scene. Starting from the tip of the sword, cracks started to appear and spread rapidly. Cracks not only appeared on the long sword, but also appeared on his body. The intense pain accompanied by the tearing of his soul made a tough guy like the Dark Warrior Emperor couldn't help but scream miserably. With a bang, a dark green smoke exploded in front of Chi Yu. The Dark Warrior Emperor disappeared. His body and soul brand had been blown to pieces by the powerful Kirin thundercloud force. This was not a contest of the same level at all. "It's your turn." His voice was heard. The Dark Warrior Emperor didn't even have time to react. Chi Yu had already appeared a foot in front of him. Instant teleportation. The energy shrouding the Dark Warrior Emperor caused his body to completely stiffen. At this moment, he couldn't even lift his little finger. An icy blue figure appeared behind Chi Yu. The chill that came from the bones was even stronger than the one from Chi Yu. The beautiful face, the familiar aura, made the Dark Warrior Emperor understand a lot. However, he no longer had the chance to experience anything. The blue light directly covered his body, directly turning him into an ice sculpture. The blue light flashed, and in an instant, the frozen body of the Dark Warrior Emperor shattered into pieces. There wasn't the slightest smell of blood. Perhaps such an ending was already the best for him. Snow Girl didn't look at the pieces of ice. When she turned her head, her eyes were full of tenderness. "Chi Yu, thank you." Chi Yu smiled faintly. "Do we still need to say thank you between us? This is what I should have done for you long ago. I'm already very embarrassed to have delayed it until now." Snow Girl gently shook her head. "No, you have so many things to do. You don't even have time to rest. Under such circumstances, you still haven't forgotten about me. Chi Yu, I know you." "Sho." Chi Yu gently pressed the lips of Snow Girl. "As long as you know, it's enough. You don't need to say it. Isn't that so?" At this point, his expression changed slightly, and he said in a deep voice, "They're here. We can't delay here any longer. We have to go back." When the dark red light disappeared, Chi Yu and Lung Air were already thousands of meters in the air. Satan, Hades, Lucifer, and Lung Air were almost chasing in their direction at the same time. Chi Yu laughed heartily. "Why? Your Majesty still doesn't want to let me go? This is just a small gift for you. You can ask Lung Air about the grudge between us and the Dark Warrior Emperor. I won't disturb your rest. Goodbye." The green light instantly accelerated, not to mention the fact that Satan and Hades had not yet recovered to their peak condition. Even if they recovered their strength and combined their strength, it would still be impossible for them to defeat Meng Meng. In terms of speed, it would not be able to catch up to Chi Yu's wind thundercloud force, which had reached the pinnacle of 8 Cloud and was only one step away from the final advancement. Hades stopped Satan as he watched the green silhouette escape into the distance. "Don't chase. This might be a trap." Satan clenched his fists tightly, his bones cracking, though he didn't say anything. But when he looked in the direction Chi Yu left, his eyes were filled with resentment. A hint of bitterness appeared on Lanier's face. At this moment, she was not thinking about how to help her father conquer Earth in the future. Instead, it was the time when he was with Chi Yu. That was an imprint on the soul. On the other side, Pope Marty and Yamu had only discovered that the enemy's army was moving, but they had no idea what had happened. When they wanted to look for Chi Yu and try to persuade him, Chi Yu and his Zodiac army had already disappeared. The 12 Zodiac team would not even ask why Chi Yu had left the battlefield. In their hearts, Chi Yu's orders were their ultimate mission, and they could not be disobeyed. In order to return to Yanhuang as soon as possible, Chiyu directly kept the 12 Zodiac team, Shangbing, Snow Girl, and the others into his Kongtong seal. Then, he immediately left the battlefield quietly. Just 5 minutes after Chiyu left, Marty immediately issued Chiyu's order to the European Union coalition forces. Of course, the order was completely fabricated by him. A violent roar sounded in the suburbs of Berlin. All the heavy firepower that the European Union coalition forces had prepared for many days poured out in an instant, covering the sky and earth as they concentrated in the direction of the burning legion. Naturally, Chiyu could feel the energy fluctuations behind him. However, this was no longer within his consideration. What he needed to do now was to rush back and kill Chiyu before he could cause too much damage to his country. Chiyu, I didn't expect him to actually come to the human world. This time, you don't need to do anything. I'm enough. The Bull Demon King's deep voice sounded in Chiyu's heart. Every time he appeared, it was so sudden without any warning. However, Chiyu was already used to it. All right, then I'll leave it to you. I'm also happy to relax. I just hope that you don't let him escape again, replied Chiyu. The Bull Demon King snorted coldly and said, If he can escape again this time, I won't be an old bull. When that time comes, you just need to help me block his escape route. You don't want him to continue wreaking havoc in your Yanhuang Republic, right? Chiyu said, All right, I can help you. However, old bull, can you also help me with one thing? After Chiyu is destroyed this time. The Bull Demon King pondered for a moment and said, Sure, I promise you that if you encounter any danger in the future, I will save your life. Using a life in exchange for blocking Chiyu's escape should be very cheap. Chiyu was a little surprised. This was because he didn't expect Old Bull to agree so readily. He didn't even consider it. Flying. He continued to fly. In the dark world of the 9-star alignment, Chiyu had already lost track of when it was day and when it was night. Below his feet, all kinds of scenery flashed past continuously. Most of the time he was flying on the sponge. The absolute darkness in the sky, coupled with the roar of the sea below his feet. This gave Chiyu a strange feeling of walking into the darkness. If it wasn't for the fact that his mental strength was strong enough to cross the ocean, he was afraid that he might even lose his way. Chiyu directly returned to the capital because he had to understand the situation first. After entering the territory of the Yanhuang Republic, Chiyu fully released his mental strength. Due to the enhancement of the wind, thundercloud force, and his soul, his current mental aura had been enhanced to an unprecedented level. He could completely carry out a large-scale search of a country. However, what surprised Chiyu was that under the search of his mental strength, with the capital as the center, there was no trace of Chiyu's aura in a large area. What was going on? Could it be that Chiyu's mental strength had already surpassed his own? Had it passed? Regarding such a situation, Chiyu was full of doubts. Ji-de would not lie to him. If he could not find Chiyu, it could only mean that Chiyu's strength far exceeded his, especially in terms of mental strength. However, that was almost impossible. After all, ever since Chiyu escaped last time, although he had lost the Shenyuan sword, his own energy had been enhanced to an unprecedented level. Chiyu might be strong. It was impossible for him to catch up with his own speed of improvement. In that case, there was only one other explanation. Chiyu must have a way to hide his aura. That was the only way that he could not be found by his own search. It was no wonder that even Old Bull could not find him during the era of the ancient beasts. This guy, he had indeed become more and more cunning. In the situation where he could not find Chiyu could only choose to return to the capital of the Yanhuang Republic. This was his own country. Although there was no power that could destroy Chiyu, it was obviously very easy to find him. From afar, Chiyu could already see the dazzling and enchanting night view of the capital. Although this night view was forced to exist, it was still so dazzling. Based on his mental strength, Chiyu directly flew in the direction of the server building. At the same time, he called Jida again. When Chiyu flew into the capital, he suddenly realized that the entire capital was very quiet. The aura of life was many times dimmer than before, especially the plants. After more than 10 days of darkness, all the plants' aura of life had been greatly depleted. Some of the weaker plants had already withered. Only the strong ones could survive. At the same time, Chiyu also realized that there were very few pedestrians on the streets of the capital. It was very quiet everywhere. Regardless of whether it was day or night, such a situation was obviously not normal. The door of the server building was tightly shut. When Chiyu arrived, Jida and Ji Zhongming, accompanied by many guards, had already been waiting there for a long time. Floating down, Chiyu landed in front of them. "Uncle, I'm back." Ji Zhongming seemed to heave a sigh of relief. "You're finally back. If you hadn't returned, I really wouldn't know how to deal with that matter. Come, follow me." Chiyu's appearance had already caused great losses, but he still needed to first understand the situation in the West from Chiyu, as well as tell him in detail about the situation here. As the saying went, plan before taking action. Arriving at the Yanhuang Seoul headquarters, Ji Zhongming directly brought Chiyu to the safest secret room. After sending the others away, only he and Chiyu remained in the room. "Chiyu, it's been hard on you. If not for the urgency of the matter, we would not have called you back in such a hurry. First, tell me about the situation on your side. What's the situation in hell and the underworld that you mentioned?" Ji Zhongming did not first talk about the predicament of Yanhuang, but instead asked Chiyu about the situation in the West, displaying the calm attitude of a general. Chiyu succinctly recounted everything that had happened in the West. After listening to his narration, Ji Zhongming could not help but frown. He smiled bitterly. "That means that we called you back. I'm afraid that they can't hold on anymore." "This," Chiyu said. "Uncle, you don't have to worry. As long as we're still here, we don't have to be afraid of hell and the underworld. Isn't it more important to solve the problem in our country first?" Ji Zhongming smiled slightly. "If the youths nowadays were as patriotic as you, I could choose to retire. All right, I'll tell you about the situation here first. Actually, what we have to face now is not just this monster that has appeared for more than a day. More importantly, the 9-star alignment has brought us great losses. Not only our country, but the entire world has been greatly affected by the 9-star alignment." At this point, he paused for a moment. His eyes revealed an extremely worried glint. You should have seen the situation outside on the way back. After the appearance of the 9-star alignment, all the plants stopped growing, and some have even begun to wither. We humans and various animals will also become weaker because of the lack of sunlight. Although artificial sunlight can play a role in a small part of the world, it is, after all, not the solution to the fundamental problem. What we are facing now can be said to be a huge disaster that has never been seen before in history. No one can say for sure what the losses will be after this disaster, but at least for now, the biggest problem we are facing is the food crisis that has already begun to appear. Chiyu was shocked. At this time, he suddenly remembered that the crisis that Earth was facing now was not only the three of hell, the underworld, and Chiyu. There was a fourth existence, and that was the 9-star alignment. If the harm that hell, the underworld, and Chiyu had caused now was only a small part of the world, then the special phenomenon of the 9-star alignment would affect the entire Earth. Sunlight, the light that no one usually paid attention to, only when it was lost did humans understand how important it was. Without sunlight, it was equivalent to losing one of the sources of life. Is there already a shortage of food? Thinking that the 9-star alignment had become a major part of the disaster, Chiyu's mood could not help but become even heavier. Ji Zhongming said, "At present, the basic problems with plants are not big. After all, our country is a large agricultural country, and our food reserves are still very abundant. At least in the short term, there will not be any problems. In order to reduce people's consumption and injuries as much as possible in the dark, the country has now ordered all the companies to stop operating and all the employees to go home to rest. The country will uniformly distribute rations to maintain their lives. Although there will not be any problems with food and water in the short term, there will be a big problem with vegetables and fruits, which are essential things. You also know that without sunlight, these plants will not be able to grow at all. Although there are some stored in the cold storage, the number of vegetables and fruits consumed in a day by a large country with more than 1 billion people is absolutely astronomical. These days, more and more people have been unable to eat vegetables and fruits. They can only rely on some vitamins and medicine to maintain the balance of their body functions. But this is, after all, not a long-term solution. As time goes on, there will definitely be a huge problem. These are the most obvious effects of the 9-star alignment so far. There are still many other negative effects that are continuously being collected. This time, the impact on the whole world is really too big. No one can describe what this feeling is. If you ask me, it seems like the end of the world. Yu, can you tell me how to end this phenomenon of the 9-star alignment? How to return the world to normal?